Let me turn down this shit real quick, because it's pretty annoying. Alright. Hey, everybody. Are you ready for this fucking Democratic debate? Are you ready for this piece of shit debate? Did I get bits? Yeah, I got 69 bits. Thank you, Shergoy. And a sub? Wow, I really thought that streaming politics would go much worse than this. But thank you, Mulk Malks. I'm kind of quiet. Let me see if I can fix that. There, that's max. I can even up the gain. Yeah, look at that. That's in the... I can see the levels. Can see infinity. Who the fuck is debating? Oh, is it too loud now? That guy just said it's much better. So, no one's debating me. It's going to be the 10 Democratic nominees who are gonna fucking lie to you for 3 hours, except for 2 of them. So, I figured since I'm sitting through this 3-hour shit show, maybe it'd be good to have some company. You are the reason that my friend and I main 3D and Ultimate. Yeah, that's good. Keep the Daddle tribe strong. Is Khonjin Yang? You better bet your ass I am. I don't fuck around. Let me see that username. Official Dandy, yeah. It's Yang, baby. And Bernie. But, yeah, Yang's been hard to deal with because I swore an oath to Bernie that if he ran, that I'm all in on him. But Yang's just like, fuck, man. Yang's too cool. I'm not actually American. Someone run down the candidates that matter. So, in my opinion, the candidates that give a shit, that mean nothing, are, you got Bernie Sanders. He's the good guy. You know, Bernie's a good man. Then you have Andrew Yang. He's cool as shit and wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. He's all about UBI. All right, here's the bad guys you got to watch out for. You got Joe Biden. Joe Biden sucks balls. You got Kamala Harris. She's pretending to be Bernie, but actually is also a corporatist dickhead. She sucks balls. John Delaney also sucks, but he's really funny, so you don't really have to worry about him, because he's never going to be president. But, wait a minute, what the fuck? Did the debate start? It's 8. Is this shit not the debate stream? Hang on, let me see something real quick. How to watch tonight's... You're gonna see it now. Let's see. CNN.com. Oh, don't do this to me. Unless this is it. No, there's no way this is it. I think this is just a fun video that's about it. Because I don't think the thing we were watching was it. Oh, get this fucking dickhead away from me. This was the shit we were back on before. Wow, Pablo, please subscribed at tier 2. Find a different streamer and restream them. How to watch it. TV channel. Free online stream. Oh, there we go. There we go. Alright. We found it. We found it. Now the true debates can begin. But it looks like I'm not the only one who wants to get to abcnews.com. Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen, for who you think is going to win. The great shitty debate. Let's see. Maybe Univision.com will have it on the front page. No. It's just a bunch of bullshit. Alright, I'll try ABC.com again. The ABC debate. Yeah, here we go. No, this shit sucks actually. Someone in the chat, give me a good link. Give me a good link to the debate, because right now I'm getting bullshit. Unless this is it. What? Is this a fucking joke? Alright. Well, this sucks. Oh, there we go. Hey, look at that. All right. The debates are here. Here we are. I'll turn this shit up now.
It's an honor to be on this debate stage. It is wonderful to be back in Texas.
Can you guys hear it?
In Houston, back here at TSU. On August 3rd, in El Paso, Texas, two things became crystal clear for me, and I think produced a turning point for this country. The first is just how dangerous Donald Trump is, the cost and the consequence of his presidency. A racism and violence that had long been
Beto's going to say a bunch of bullshit for 5 minutes.
Out into the open and directed to my hometown of El Paso, Texas, where 22 people were killed, dozens more grievously injured by a man carrying a weapon he should never have been able to buy in the first place, inspired to kill.
This guy will say in 10 minutes
the second
what you can say in one sentence.
Our politics is to meet the threat that we have right now. The bitterness, the pettiness, the smallness of the moment, the incentive to attack the craziness, and try to make differences without distinctions, mountains out of molehills. We have to be bigger. We have to see clearly. We have to speak honestly, and we have to act decisively. That's what I want to do for you as President of the United States. Thank you.
When I'm president, things are going to be good instead of bad.
It was over 20 years ago that I was a law student and moved to inner city Newark, New Jersey to serve as a tenants' rights lawyer to try to address the challenges in my community. And I was sobered by them, the gun violence, the substandard housing. But it was my greatest mentor, a woman named Miss Virginia Jones, who challenged me. She said, boy, if all you see in this neighborhood is problems, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're stubborn and defiant and can put forth a vision that can unify people, then we can make transformative change. She was a church woman that said,
if we just come together,
the people will perish.
This.
Well, that's exactly what we did. We created extraordinary unity in our community, and we did things that other people thought was impossible. That's the story of America. At our best, we unify. We find common cause and common purpose. The differences amongst us Democrats on the stage are not as great as the urgency for us to unite as a party.
We may seem pretty divided right now, but if we come together, we can do anything, and that's why you should vote for me.
That's why I'm running for president, and that's how I will lead this nation.
They sound like fifth graders reading off a report in front of the class.
Entrepreneur Andrew Yang.
All right, shut the fuck up. It's our boy.
In America today, everything revolves around the almighty dollar. Our schools, our hospitals, our media, even our government. It's why we don't trust our institutions anymore. We have to get our country working for us again instead of the other way around. We have to see ourselves as the owners and shareholders of this democracy rather than inputs into a giant machine.
Hell yeah.
When you donate money to a presidential campaign, what happens? The politician spends the money on TV ads and consultants, and you hope it works out. It's time to trust ourselves more than our politicians. That's why I'm going to do something unprecedented tonight. My campaign will now give a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families, someone watching this at home right now. If you believe that you can solve your own problems better than any politician, go to yang2020.com and tell us how $1,000 a month will help you do just that. This is how we will get our country working for us again, the American people.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Hell yeah, his boys are out here. Pete's fucked. He's got nothing.
It's original, I'll give you that. The American people are divided and doubtful.
This
at the
fucking
very
asshole.
moment we need to rise
It's original,
to
I'll
some of
give
the
you
greatest
that.
challenges
Says
we've
the
ever
most
faced.
unoriginal thing.
As a mayor
Right.
of an industrial city,
This
coming
country
back
is
from the
divided.
brink, as a
Yeah.
veteran of the war in
Good one,
Afghanistan,
Pete.
I know what's at stake in our national leadership. We keep sending politicians to Washington, asking them to fight for us. But then when they get there, they seem more interested in the part about fighting than
We
the part
live in a
about
society.
us. Good politics is supposed to be not about the day-to-day fights of the politicians, but about the day-to-day lives
Holy
of
crap,
Americans.
Lois. This
We just marked the
politician is
anniversary
gay.
of 9/11. All day today, I've been thinking about September 12th, the way it felt when for a moment we came together as a country. Imagine if we had been able to sustain that unity. Imagine what would be possible right now with ideas that are bold enough to meet the challenges of our time, but big enough as well that they could unify the American people. That's what presidential leadership can do. That's what the presidency is for, and that is why I'm asking for your vote.
And that's why I'm giving everybody $2,000 at home. You heard it here.
Thank you. It's great to be back at TSU. So I plan on spending tonight talking with you about my plans to address the problems that keep you up at night. But first, I have a few words for Donald Trump, who we all know is watching.
Yeah, this is
So
going to be
President
great.
Trump, you've spent the last 2.5 years full-time trying to sow hate and division
President
among us,
Trump, you're fucking
as
gay.
well as why we
Fuck
got
you.
nothing done. You have
Someone
used
had the
hate,
balls to say it.
intimidation,
I'm glad she did.
fear, and over 12,000 lies
Trump,
as a way to
you're
distract
fired.
from your failed policies and your broken promises. The only reason you've not been indicted is because there was a memo in the Department of Justice that says a sitting president cannot be charged with a crime.
So when
But
Andrew
here's what
Yang
you don't
becomes the
get.
president, he's
What
gonna
you don't
own you
get
in the
is that
balls.
the American people are so much better than this. And we know that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us, regardless of our race, where we live, or the party with which we're registered to vote. And I plan on focusing on our common issues, our common hopes and desires, and in that way unifying our country, winning this election.
Trump doesn't
and
know what
turning the
half of
page
these
for
words
America.
means. She's just
And now, President Trump,
saying
you can
nothing.
go back to watching Fox News.
Yeah. Get ready for a lot more of that, my friends. There's more where that came from.
Senator Sanders.
Let me be blunt and tell you what you don't hear much about in Congress or in the media. And that is, it goes without saying that we must and will defeat Trump, the most dangerous president in the history of this country. But we must do more. We must do more. We have got to recognize that this country is moving into an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires control the economic and political life of this country.
Cut the feed.
And as
Cut the feed.
president,
Come on.
I am prepared to take them on. Yes, we will raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Yes, we will finally make sure that every American has health care as a human right, not a privilege. And yes, we will address the catastrophic crisis of climate change and transform our energy system away from fossil fuel.
Senator Elizabeth Warren.
So I was born and raised in Oklahoma, but I'm sure glad to be in Texas tonight. All three of my brothers served in military bases here in Texas. That was their ticket to the middle class. Me, I got my big opportunity about
So
a half
you gotta
mile
pay
down the
close
road
attention
from
to
here
Elizabeth
at the
Warren
University of
because
Houston, back when it cost
she
$50
has been raising a lot of red
for
flags
a
that
price
she's
I could pay for on a
pretty
part-time
miserable
waitressing
corporatist.
job.
But
I
we're
got to
gonna find
finish
out,
my
I think.
four-year degree, and I became a special needs teacher. And after law school, my first big job was back here in Houston. By then, I had 2 little kids, and when childcare nearly brought me down, my Aunt Bee moved in and saved us all. The paths to America's middle class
Elizabeth
have
Warren,
gotten a lot
my Aunt
smaller
Bean
and a
will
lot
save us
narrower.
all.
Today, service members are preyed upon by predatory lenders. Students are crushed by debt, and families cannot afford childcare. I know what's broken. I know
My
how to
Aunt
fix
B
it,
movie.
and I'm going to lead the fight to get it done.
Isn't this a debate?
Vice
Why the
President
fuck
Joe
is she
Biden.
talking about her life story?
You know, when President
Well,
Kennedy
this must be your
announced the
first time at
moonshot,
one of
he used
these.
a phrase that sticks with me my whole life. He said, "We're doing it because we refuse to postpone." Well, I refuse to postpone one more minute spending billions of dollars on curing cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases, which if we invest in them, we can find
Very
cures.
bold of him to bring up
I refuse
Alzheimer's.
To postpone giving every single child in America, no matter their zip code, pre-K all the way through high school and beyond. I refuse to postpone any longer taking on climate change. And
He looks
leading
like
the
Bush.
world in
I
taking
misread
on
that as he
climate
looks
change.
like a bush,
Look,
like a literal
this is the
shrub.
United States of America. There's never been a single solitary time when we've set our mind to something we've been unable to do it. We're walking around with our heads down like, woe is me. We're the best equipped nation in the world to take this
Yeah,
on.
this is kinda
It's no
crazy
longer time to
that,
postpone. We
he's
should
on
get
this whole
moving.
shtick
There's
about
enormous
all the other
opportunities
candidates are
once we get rid
promising
of
crazy
Donald
shit.
Trump.
He's literally talking about curing cancer.
Candidates, thank you. Several of you said you are more united than divided, and that is certainly true. All of you agree on one big thing: the goal of defeating President Trump, driving the country in a new direction.
What a bar.
But out on the campaign trail, you have outlined big differences over how far to go and how fast to go. And Vice President Biden, the differences between you and the senators on either side of you tonight strike at the heart of this primary debate. Both Senators Warren and Sanders want to replace Obamacare with Medicare for all. You want to build on Obamacare, not scrap it. They propose spending far more than you to combat climate change and tackle student loan debt, and they would raise more in taxes than you to pay for their programs. Are Senators Warren and Sanders pushing too far, beyond where Democrats want to go and where the country needs to go?
Yes, I do. But hang on,
Wait
we're
for
going to
the
get
voters
cancer.
decide
We
that question. Let me tell you what I think. I think we should have a debate on health care. I think, I know that the senator says she's for Bernie. Well, I'm for Barack. I think the Obamacare worked. I think the way in which we add to it, replace everything that's been cut, add a public option, guarantee that everyone will be able to have affordable
That was the
insurance,
weirdest
number
way
one.
to
Number
phrase
two,
that,
I
to
think
be
we should
able
in
to
a
say
position to
the
take a
word
look at what
Barack.
costs are.
I like
My
that.
plan for health care costs a lot of money. It costs $740 billion. It doesn't cost $30 trillion. 3.4 trillion a year, it turns out, is twice what the entire federal budget is. That's before it exists now, without interest on the debt. How are we going to pay for it? I want to hear tonight how that's happened. So as far my distinguished
Get
friend,
ready for that.
the senator on my
The
left
best
is
part
not-
about Joe
has not
Biden is I
indicated how
could
she
just
feels.
do this, see that, and then you don't have to hear the rest of this shit. Oh my God. Whoops. I just wanted to point out, you're going to hear a lot of how can you pay for this bullshit when we've paid for shit way more expensive than this, like the fucking wars and the tax cuts, doesn't get brought up. But this shit, how you gonna pay for it? There's just no way. We can't afford it. So here's a good drinking game. Take a shot every time they ask how are they gonna pay for it. Take 2 shots if they don't bring up military-industrial complex, if they don't bring up that the current healthcare system costs more. Get ready. Just keep that in mind.
Make that same admission.
So let's be clear about health care, and let's actually start where Vice President did. We all owe a huge debt to President Obama, who fundamentally transformed health care in America and committed this country to health care for every human being. And now the question is, how best can we improve on it? And I believe the best way we can do that is we make sure that everybody gets covered by health care at the lowest possible cost. How do we pay for it? We pay for it. Those at the very top, the richest individuals and the biggest corporations, are going to pay more. And middle-class families are going to pay less. That's how this is going to work.
Direct question. You said middle-class families are going to pay less, but will middle-class taxes go up to pay for the program? I know you believe that the deductibles and the premiums will go down.
Yeah.
Will middle-class taxes go up? Will private insurance be eliminated?
Look, what families have to deal with is cost, total cost. That's what they have to deal with. And understand, families are paying for their health care today. Families pay every time an insurance company says, sorry, you can't see that specialist. Every time an insurance company says, sorry, that doctor is out of network. Sorry, we are not covering that prescription. Families are paying every time they don't get a prescription filled because they can't pay for it. They don't have a lump checked out because they can't afford the copay. What we're talking about here is what's going to happen in families' pockets, what's going to happen in their budgets. And the answer is on Medicare for All. Costs are going to go up for wealthier individuals, and costs are going to go up for giant corporations. But for hardworking families across this country, costs are going to go down, and that's how it should work under Medicare for All in our health care system.
Senator Sanders, you were invoked by the vice president. Also take on that question about taxes.
Joe said that
Hang on, I'll talk about this in a
Medicare
sec.
for all will cost over $30 trillion. That's right, Joe. Status quo over 10 years will be $50 trillion.
Thank fucking
Every
God.
study done shows that Medicare for all is the most cost-effective approach to providing health care to every man, woman, and child in this country.
You don't have to take a shot anymore. He actually said it.
The damn bill, if I may say so, intend to eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses, all deductibles, all co-payments. Nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for prescription drugs because we're going to stand up to the greed and corruption and price fixing of the pharmaceutical industry. We need a healthcare system that guarantees healthcare to all people, as every other major country does, not a system which provides $100 billion a year in profit for the drug companies and the insurance companies. And to tell you how absurd the system is, tonight on ABC, the healthcare industry will be advertising, telling you how bad Medicare for All is because they want to protect their profits. That is absurd.
Vice President Biden,
Hell yeah.
George, you get a response, and then we're going to broaden out the discussion.
Okay, number one, my health care plan does significantly cut the cost of it. The largest out-of-pocket payment you'll pay is $1,000.
Okay.
You'll be able to get into anyone who can't afford it gets automatically enrolled in the Medicare type option we have, et cetera. But guess what? Of the 160 million people who like their health care now, they can keep it. If they don't like it, they can leave. Number one. Number two, the fact of the matter is we're in a situation where, if you notice, he hadn't answered the question. This is about candor, honesty, big ideas. Well, let's have a big idea. The tax of 2% that the senator is talking about, that raises about $3 billion. Guess what? That leaves you about $28 billion short. The senator said before it's going to cost you in your pay. There will be a deductible in your paycheck. You're going to, the middle class person, someone making 60 grand with 3 kids, they're going to end up paying $5,000 more. They're going to end up paying 4% more on their income tax. That's a reality. Now, it's not a bad idea if you like it.
The finger wave of justice. It's happening. Someone's going to die.
You did invoke both senators. I have to get responses from them, and then we will run out.
Good.
Senator Warren, you go first.
So let's be clear. I've actually never met anybody who likes their health insurance company. I've met people who like their doctors. I've met people who like their nurses. I've met people who like their
So it seems like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie are still going to team up tonight. So that much is wise. I like that.
And we just need to be clear about what Medicare for All is all about. Instead of paying premiums into insurance companies and then having insurance companies build their profits by saying no to coverage, we're going to do this by saying everyone is covered by Medicare for All. Every health care provider is covered. And the only question here in terms of difference is where to send the bill.
Senator Sanders.
Let us be clear, Joe. In the United States of America, we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the Canadians or any other major country on earth.
This is America.
Yeah, but Americans don't want to pay twice as much as other countries. and they guarantee health care to all people. Under my Medicare for All proposal, when you don't pay out of pocket and you don't pay premiums, maybe you have run into people who love their premiums. I haven't. What people want is cost-effective health care. Medicare for all.
Yeah, you heard that
will
right.
save
That is what he said.
the average American substantial sums of money on his or her health care bill.
Senator Klobuchar, you said in your opening statement you want to represent.
Oh
the
yeah,
people
can't
stuck
wait
in
to
the
hear
middle
what
extremes.
Amy
Who represents the
Klobuchar has to
extreme
say
on
about
this
this,
stage?
because she's going to be the
I
president.
think you know that I don't agree with some of these proposals up here, George. So I'm talking
Which
about
ones?
if I could.
Real
if I could
Chatterbox
respond to some of the
subscribed for
proposals
3
from my
months,
friends.
and I will
First
interrupt
of all,
this
Senator
because she
Sanders and
has
I have
literally
worked
nothing to
valiantly
say.
to bring down the cost of pharmaceuticals. That was a Klobuchar-Sanders amendment to allow for drugs to come in from less expensive countries.
Check
like
this out.
Canada.
It's going to be
We
Diet
worked
Joe
to
Biden.
bring down the cost by fighting to allow 43 million seniors, that's a bill I lead, to negotiate for better prices under Medicare. I figure that's a lot of seniors, and they should be allowed to get a better price. But when it comes to our health care and when it comes to our premiums, I go with the doctor's creed, which is do no harm. And while Bernie wrote the bill, I read the bill. And on page 8,
Damn, what a zinger.
Page 8 of the bill,
That wasn't on purpose,
private insurance
but I'm
as
glad
we
I
know
did
it. And
accidentally turn it
that
down.
means that 149 million Americans will no longer be able to have their current insurance. That's in 4 years.
Here, you're going to get used to that a lot too, and be like, they won't have their current insurance anymore. Americans love their current insurance. She read a piece of paper that says this thing that's true. No one wants their current bullshit insurance, but you know, it'd be like that. All right, let's see what Warren has to say, because none of these other dickheads are getting any
I'm
airtime.
sorry. She said page 8 of the bill, 149 people will lose their health insurance.
Look, current health insurance.
149 million.
Million, excuse me.
So let's be clear about this. People will have access to all of their doctors, all of their nurses, their community hospitals, their rural hospitals. Doctors won't have to hire people to fill out crazy forms. They won't have to spend time on the phone arguing with insurance companies. People who have sick family members won't have to get into these battles.
She looked like she was
What this
pulling
is
out a
about
gun.
is making sure that we have the most efficient way possible to pay for health care for everyone in this country. Insurance companies last year sucked $23 billion
Should have just
in
stopped it,
profits
sucked, but,
out of
you
the
know.
system. How did they make that money? Every one of those $23 billion.
Yeah, Yang already
was
did
made
the thing.
by
He
the
said that
insurance
10
companies
people are
saying
going to get
no
the
to your
freedom
healthcare.
dividend.
Judge.
The problem, Senator Sanders, with that damn bill that you wrote, and that Senator Warren backs.
The
is that it doesn't
problem
trust
with
the
your
American
bill
people.
is that it's
I
not
trust
in the
you
middle
to
enough.
choose what makes the most sense
I
for you.
like Bernie,
Not
but I
one way
like
or the
Joe.
other. Now, look, I think we do have to go far beyond tinkering with the ACA. I propose Medicare for all who want it. We take a version of Medicare, we make it available for the American people, and if we're right, as progressives, that that public alternative is better, then the American people will figure that out for themselves. I trust the American people to make the right choice for them. Why don't you?
Senator Sanders, 45 seconds.
George, you talked about, was it 150 million people on private insurance? 50 million of those people lose their private insurance every year when they quit their jobs, or when they go unemployed, or their employer changes their insurance policy. Medicare for All is comprehensive health care, covers all basic needs, including home health care. It allows you to go to any doctor you want, which many private insurance company programs do not. So if you want comprehensive health care, freedom of choice regarding doctor or hospital, no more than $200 a year for prescription drugs, taking on the drug companies and the insurance companies, moving to Medicare for all is the way to go.
Senator Harris, you started out co-sponsoring Senator Sanders' bill.
Oh, boy.
You now say you're uncomfortable with it. Why?
I want to give credit first to Barack Obama for really bringing us this far.
Be sure to genuflect to the Obama man. Don't even
Credit to Bernie. Take credit, Bernie. You know, you brought us
Oh
this
my
far in
God.
Medicare for all. I support Medicare for all. I always have, but I wanted to
Oh,
make the
fuck
plan
you.
better, which I did, which is about offering people choice, not taking that from them. So under my Medicare for all plan, people have the choice of a private plan or a public plan because that's what people want. And I agree we shouldn't take choice from people. But here's the thing.
It's not what
Everybody
Medicare
on
for
the
all
stage,
is, but,
I do
you know.
believe, is well-intentioned and wants that all Americans have coverage and recognizes that right now 30 million Americans don't have coverage. But at least 5 people
What a
have talked so
backhanded
repeatedly
fucking
on the
remark.
subject, and not once have we talked about Donald Trump. So let's talk about the fact that Donald Trump came into office.
How about
and
let's
spent
not
almost
talk
the
about it?
entire first
Like,
year of his
Jesus
term
Christ.
trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. We all fought against it, and then the late great John
Why do they hate
McCain,
Bernie?
at that moment at about 2 o'clock
Because
in
the
morning,
establishment
killed
hates Bernie.
his
He
attempt
actually wants to do
take
shit.
healthcare from
And that's
millions
going to
of
affect
people
their
in
bottom
this
line,
country.
is the basic
Fast forward
idea.
to today, and what is happening? Donald Trump's Department of Justice is trying to get rid of
Watch
the
this. It's turned down. Does it make a difference? You can fill it in. Viewers at home, fill it in with whatever you want. Donald Trump shot a fucking blue whale. Killed one of the rarest whales ever. Are we just going to sit here and take this, America? Donald Trump was at the grocery store yesterday and bought 3 packs of gum with pennies. Aren't you sick of this? Aren't you sick of this bullshit, Bernie? And Bernie's not going to call his bitch ass out, but I am. And this is going to go on for 3 more minutes while she backhands Bernie's Medicare for all.
To Congressman O'Rourke and then go ahead, Mr. Vice
15
President.
seconds. Look, everybody says we want an option. The option I'm proposing is a Medicare for all, Medicare for choice. If you want Medicare, if you lose the job from your insurance company, from your employer, you automatically can buy into this. You don't have no pre-existing condition can stop you from buying in. You get covered, period. And if you notice, nobody's yet said how much it's going to cost the taxpayer. I hear this large savings.
They said that at the fucking beginning.
My friend from Vermont thinks that the employer is going to give you back if you negotiate as union all these years, got a cut in wages because you got insurance. They're going to give back that money to the employee?
Matter of fact, they will.
Well, let me tell you something. For a socialist, you got a lot more confidence in corporate America than I do.
Senator
Okay,
Sanders.
1 minute, George.
Go ahead.
All right. 2 points.
Yep.
You got to defend the fact that today, not only do we have 87 million people uninsured and underinsured, you got to defend the fact that 500,000 Americans are going bankrupt.
Get him.
You know why they're going bankrupt? Because they suffered a terrible disease, cancer or heart disease. Under my legislation, people will not go into financial ruin because they suffered with a diagnosis of cancer. And our program is the only one that does that.
I know a lot about cancer. Let me tell you something.
Oh my God, don't do it.
Let me tell you something.
Don't do
Every
it.
single person who is diagnosed with cancer or any other disease can automatically become part of this plan. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They can join immediately. And we're talking 4, 6, 8, 10 years, depending on you talk about, before we get to Medicare for all. Come on. I've been there. You've been there.
Come on.
You know what it's like. People need help now, hope now, and do something now.
Congressman O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Oh, Beto. I can't wait to hear what Beto has to fucking say about this.
I'm grateful that we all agree about the urgency of this challenge and the fact that Donald Trump is undermining the limited protections.
And I'm
that we
grateful
have
to
right
Obama
now.
for making
But I
this
also think
possible.
we're being offered a false choice between those who propose an all-or-nothing gambit, forcing tens of millions off of insurance that they like, that works for them, to force them onto Medicare, and others who want to, as a vice president does, incrementally improve what we have, which will still leave many, maybe millions, uninsured and uncared for in a state like Texas, where the largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system. We've got to do better. In my proposal, Medicare for America says everyone who's uninsured will be
Medicare for America.
Everyone who's insufficiently insured, cannot afford it, can move over to Medicare. And those, like members of unions who fought for the health care plans that work for them and their families, are able to keep them. That is the best possible path forward.
Healthcare is the top issue for everyone in the country. I want to make sure everyone gets 1 minute to respond. So Secretary Castro, Andrew Yang, and then Senator Booker, you all get a minute.
Thank you. And, I also want to recognize the work that Bernie has done on this. And, of course, we owe a debt of gratitude to President Barack Obama.
There we go.
I also work for President Obama, Vice President Biden, and I know that the problem with your plan is that it leaves 10 million people uncovered.
Christ.
Now, on the last debate stage in Detroit, you said that wasn't true. When Senator Harris brought that up, there was a fact check of that, and they said that was true. I grew up with a grandmother who had type 2 diabetes, and I watched her condition get worse and worse.
Who is this guy?
But that whole time she had Medicare.
Someone who's been polling
I
at
want
1%,
every single American
took a swipe at Bernie, pulled higher, and is not going to be the
Medicare
president.
plan available. If they choose to hold on to strong, solid private health insurance, I believe they should be able to do that. But the difference between what I support and what you support, Vice President Biden, is that you require them to opt in. And I would not require them to opt in. They would automatically be enrolled. They wouldn't have to buy in. That's a big difference, because Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered. My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Ooh, playing on the dementia. All right.
I mean, I can't believe that you said 2 minutes ago that they had to buy in, and now you're saying they don't have to buy. You're forgetting that.
I said anyone like your grandmother who has no money.
We need a healthcare system.
You're automatically
enrolls people regardless of whether they choose to opt in or not. If you lose your job, for instance, his healthcare plan would not automatically enroll you. You would have to opt in. My healthcare plan would. That's a big difference. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not.
I'll be surprised to him.
Are you fucking kidding me?
This is why presidential debates are becoming unwatchable. This reminds everybody of what they cannot stand about Washington. Scoring points against each other, poking at each other, and telling each other that
and these canned attack lines like this.
That's called a Democratic primary election. That's called an election. That's an election. This is what we're here for. It's an election.
Yeah, but a house divided cannot stand. And that is not how we're
Look, everyone, we know we're on the same team.
Thank you, Amy.
We know we're on the same team. We all have a better vision for healthcare than our current president. And I believe we're talking about this the wrong way. As someone who has run a business, I know that our current healthcare system makes it harder to hire people, makes it harder to give them benefits and treat them as full-time employees. You instead pretend they're contractors. It's harder to change jobs. It's certainly harder to start a business. The pitch we have to make to the American people is we will get the healthcare weight off of your backs and then unleash the hopes and dreams of the American people.
Senator Booker.
Now, I am Asian, so I know a lot of doctors. And they tell me that they spend a lot of time on paperwork, avoiding being sued, and navigating the insurance bureaucracy. We have to change the incentives so instead of revenue and activity, people are focused on our health in the healthcare system. And the Cleveland Clinic, where they're paid not based upon how many procedures they prescribe, shocker, they prescribe fewer procedures, and patient health stays the same or improves. That is the pitch to the American people.
Senator Booker, close out this discussion.
Thank you very much. Look, there are a lot of people watching at home right now, listening to us, that are afraid because they are in crisis. They don't have health insurance. Their health insurance doesn't go far enough. They can't afford their prescription drugs. Look, I'm clear in what I believe. I believe in Medicare for all. I believe it's the best way to rationalize the system. But dear God, I know that every one of my colleagues on this stage is in favor of universal health coverage and comes at this with the best of intentions. And I'll tell you, there is an urgency right now in this nation. Everybody feels it. And as a person who has an ideal, I know we cannot sacrifice.
Hang on. I'm going to ignore the last part of this because he's a fucking idiot. But did he just say he supports Medicare for all? Because that's new. Is that new? Am I going crazy? Cory Booker is for Medicare for all? Because I'm pretty sure that that has to be new. There's no way that is not a recent development.
And we cannot lose it by the way we talk about each other or demonize and degrade each other. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. If I am the leader, I will work towards the ideal of health insurance, health coverage being a right for all Americans, but every single day I'll join with other Democrats
Yang just convinced
to make progress happen in our nation for the people that are struggling and suffering today.
Candidates, thank you. Lindsay Davis.
Thanks, George. Since we're here at an HBCU, I'd like to start with
he co-sponsored Bernie's bill.
Several
well, so did
recent
Kamala,
polls
but she is not for it at all.
Their number one concern is racism. This campus, this state, and this nation are still raw from that racially motivated attack on Latinos in El Paso. Now, we know that the racial divide started long before President Trump and President Obama, but each of you on this stage has said that President Trump has made that divide worse. Congressman O'Rourke, coming to you first, why are you the most qualified candidate to address this divide?
I've always said he's the most qualified to deal with racism.
In no uncertain terms on August 3rd and every day since then, and I was talking about it long before then as well. Racism in America is endemic. It is foundational.
If he says fuck, you gotta take a shot.
At the 4th of July, 1776, but August 20th, 1619, when the first kidnapped African was brought to this country against his will and in bondage and as a slave, built the greatness and the success and the wealth that neither he
and the
nor his
goodness
descendants would
and
ever
the
be able
power
to fully
and
participate
the honesty
and enjoy.
and the
We have to
responsibility.
be able to answer this challenge, and it is
We have to
found in
answer
our
any
education system, where in
challenges.
Texas, a 5-year-old
This challenge is not bigger than the racism that we can beat, and I'd like to thank Obama for giving me the strength to stand here today and tell this to you now.
There's a maternal mortality crisis 3 times as deadly for women of color, or the fact that there's 10 times the wealth in white America than there is in black America. I'm going to follow Sheila Jackson Lee's lead and sign into law a reparations bill.
I went onto Wikipedia and searched top 10 most influential black people, and now I'm on the debate stage today to tell you about it.
In the White House, and he poses a mortal threat to people of color all across this country.
Secretary Castro, 45 seconds to respond.
I want to commend Beto for how well he has spoken to the passion and the frustration and the sadness after what happened in his hometown of El Paso. He's done a great job with that. Look, a few weeks ago, a shooter drove 10 miles inspired by this 10 hours inspired by this president to kill people who look like me and people who look like my family. White supremacy is a growing threat to this country, and we have to root it out. I'm proud that I put forward a plan to disarm hate.
So why do we hate O'Rourke here? Wasn't he cool back in the midterms? He was, until we found out he lied about taking PAC money, and he took a lot from Big Oil. So turns out, fuck him. Also voted to deregulate Wall Street. So turns out he was completely full of shit. But, you know, when you're running against Ted Cruz, you really like to look the other way on these things. So that is about the long and short of it. Also, mostly, as you'll see on stage, he speaks only in platitudes and literally nothing else. But let's see what Cory Booker has to say about racism.
Senator, what do you plan to do about it?
Well, first and foremost, I want to hit that point because we know Donald Trump's a racist, but there is no red badge of courage for calling him that. When racism exists, the question isn't who isn't a racist, it's who is and isn't doing something about racism. And this is not just an issue that started yesterday. It's not just an issue that we hear a president that can't condemn white supremacy. We have systemic racism that is eroding
Just found out about racism.
From healthcare to
Damn,
the
that
criminal
shit
justice
sucks.
system. And it's nice to go all the way back to slavery, but dear God, we have a criminal justice system that is so racially biased. We have more African Americans under criminal supervision today than all the slaves in 1850. We have to come at this issue attacking systemic racism, having the courage to call it out, and having a plan to do something about it. If I am president of the United States, we will create an office in the White House to deal with the problem of white supremacy and hate crimes. And we will make sure that systemic racism is dealt with in substantive plans, from criminal justice reform,
If I am
disparities
president,
in healthcare, to even one that we don't talk about enough, which is the racism that we see in environmental injustice in communities of color all around this country.
Mayor Buttigieg, you've been struggling with issues around race in your own community. You've also said that anyone who votes to re-elect President Trump is at best looking the other way on racism. Does that sort of talk alienate voters and potentially deepen divisions in our country?
I believe what's deepened divisions in the country is the conduct of this president, and we have a chance to change all of that. Look, systemic racism preceded this president, and even when we defeat him, it will be with us. That's why we need a systemic approach to dismantle it. It's not enough to just take a racist policy, replace it with a neutral one, and expect things will just get better on their own. Harms compound. In the same way that a dollar saved compound, so does a dollar stolen. And we know that the generational theft of the descendants of slaves is part of.
But what about $1,000 saved? Just saying.
To employment basically puts us in two different countries. I have proposed the most comprehensive vision to tackle systemic racism in every one of these areas, marshaling as many resources as went into the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe, but this time a Douglas Plan that we invest right here at home, to make sure that we're not only dealing with things like the over-incarceration of black Americans, but also black solutions, entrepreneurship, raising to 25% the target for the federal government to do business with minority-owned businesses, investing in HBCUs that are training and educating the next generation of entrepreneurs. We can and must do that, but that means transcending this framework that pits us against each other, that pits a single black mother of three against a displaced auto worker. Because where I come from, a lot of times that displaced auto worker is a single black mother of three. We've got to say that and bring people together.
Also a concern for people of color is criminal justice reform. Senator Harris, you released your plan for that just this week.
Oh, boy.
It does contradict some of your prior positions.
They're asking the prosecutor about criminal justice reform. Get ready for some, like, top-tier bullshit on this answer.
Other things because you were, quote, swimming against the current, and thankfully the currents have changed. But when you had the power, why didn't you try to effect change then?
Oh, wow. An actual hard question. Let's see if she answers it. She won't, but let's see.
You asked me this question, and there have been many distortions of my record. Let me be very clear. I made a decision to become a prosecutor for two reasons. One, I've always wanted to protect people and keep them safe. And second, I was born knowing about how this criminal justice system in America has worked in a way that has been informed by racial bias. And I could tell you extensively about the experiences I and my family members have personally had. But I made a decision that if I was going to have the ability to reform the system, I would try to do it from the inside. And so I took on the position that allowed me, without asking permission, to create one of the first in the nation initiatives that was a model and became a national model around people who were arrested for drugs and getting them jobs. I created one of the first in the nation requirements.
I do not know how she has the fucking gall to talk about how she was good with drugs. But let's see this unfold. Let's see this keep going.
Trainings for police officer on the issue of racial bias and the need to reform the system. Was I able to get enough done? Absolutely not. But my plan has been described by activists as being a bold and comprehensive plan that is about ending mass incarceration, about taking the profit out of the criminal justice system. I plan on shutting down
some people say
prisons on day one. It will be about what we need to do to hold law enforcement, including prosecutors, accountable. And finally, my plan is about making sure that in America's criminal justice system, we de-incarcerate women and children, that we end solitary confinement, and that we work on keeping families intact. And as President of the United States, knowing the system from the inside, I will have the ability to be.
There are too many women and children in jail, is my take. Khonjin, who are you going for in the election? Bernie and Yang. It's all about Bernie and Yang. Fuck everybody else.
Men were killed by police. Critics say that too often you sided with police.
This stream is property of Yang Gang, Bernie Gang. That is true.
Minnesota has said that you showed no interest in racial justice. Do you wish now that you had done more?
That's not my record. We are here at a historically black.
Did you hear the 3 Amy Klobuchar fans in the audience?
Said what the people want is simple. They want a country as good as its promise. And that same can be said of the criminal justice system. So when I was there, the way we handled these police shootings, I actually took a stand to make sure outside.
Fuck yeah, you got him, Amy. You tell him what's what.
Major police chief in Minneapolis. But in the prosecutor's office, they were handled with the grand jury. That's how they were all handled across our state.
That's my daughter up there. I'm so proud.
The prosecutor handles them and makes those decisions herself. That aside, I am proud of the work our staff did, 400 people in our office. The cases that came to us, the African-American community that came to us, they said there was no justice for their little kids. There was a kid named Byron Phillips that was shot on his front porch. No one had bothered to figure out who did it. When I came into that office, we worked with the community groups, we put up billboards.
Her eyes are bouncing back and forth between the same 2 people.
We did the same for the killer of a little girl named Taisha Edwards, who was doing her homework at her kitchen table and was shot through the window. What changes did we make?
Wait, who was shot through the window?
Crimes in a big way. Diversify the office in a big way.
The one time I'm not paying attention, she says the most interesting thing.
Much better with eyewitness ID.
And that's when I threw the criminal through the window and stomped his fucking head off. And if you vote for me, I'm going to do the same to Donald Trump. Thank you, Obama.
90% of people that are incarcerated in local and state jails, let's reduce those sentences for nonviolent offenders, and let's get them jobs and let them vote when they get out of prison.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. You all believe that the war on drugs has put too many Americans behind bars. Vice President Biden, you have a plan to release many nonviolent drug offenders from prison. Senator Booker says that your plan is not ambitious enough. Your response?
Well, first of all, let me say that when I came back from law school, I had a job with a big-time law firm. I left and became a public defender because my state was under siege. When Dr. King was assassinated, we were occupied by the National Guard for 10 months. I've been involved from the beginning. As a young congressman, as a young councilman, I introduced legislation to try to keep them putting a sewer plant in a poor neighborhood. I made sure that we dealt with redlining. Banks should have to lend where they operate, et cetera. The fact of the matter is that what's happened is that we're in a situation now where there are so many people who are in jail and shouldn't be in jail. The whole means by which this should change is to hold.
Can we establish a list of candidates where I can freely interrupt them even when they're answering a question? Because I vote that Biden is one of them. If you guys want to hear Biden, I'll put him back on. But like, I feel like there should be a few people on here where we just don't have to sit through their bullshit. I'd vote for Amy Klobuchar and fucking Beto, because he literally says nothing.
Marijuana, for example, immediately upon being released, they shouldn't be in there for that should be a misdemeanor. They should be out and their record should be expunged. Every single right should be returned. When you finish your term in prison, you should be able not only vote, but have access to Pell Grants, have access to be able to get housing, have access to be able to move along the way. I've laid out a detailed plan along those lines. And the fact is we've learned so much more.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator Booker, 45 seconds to respond.
Our criminal justice system is so savagely broken. There's no difference in America between blacks, whites, and Latinos for using drugs or dealing drugs. But if you're African American, you're almost 4 times more likely to be arrested and incarcerated, destroying your.
If even one person wants to hear it, I'll make sure that we'll hear Joe. If he's a front runner and you want to hear his shit, I will. Corey's also kind of a fuck, but you know.
Unjustly incarcerated in America, and all of us should come forward and say, when we are president of the United States, when I am president of the United States, we will release them. And let me be specific. I joined together and led in the United States Senate the only major bipartisan bill passed under this president for criminal justice reform that has already led to thousands of people coming out of jail. If 87 members of the United States Senate says that these sentences are way too long, and we changed it, but we didn't make it retroactive, we could literally point to the people that are in jail unjustly right now. Everyone on this stage should say that we are going to give clemency to these 17,000 people. And I challenge you, don't just say big statements, back it up with details of the people in prison right now looking for one of the most sacrosanct ideals of this nation, which is liberty and freedom. We need to reform this system,
on, buddy.
and we must do it now. Every
Thank
day
you,
we
Senator
wait is
Booker.
too long.
Thank you, Lindsay. I want to turn to the deadly mass shootings here in this country, and of course we are all mindful tonight of where we stand. We are here in Texas tonight where 29 people have lost their lives.
Is John Delaney on stage, by the way? Is he here?
In Odessa, and I know there are survivors from El Paso right here in the hall tonight. Vice President Biden, I do want to direct this to you because we all remember Sandy Hook. 26 people died in that school, 20 of them children. Those first graders would be in 8th grade today. At the time, there was a groundswell in this country to get something done. President Obama asked you to lead the push for gun control. You have often pointed to your ability to reach across the aisle to get things done. But 4 months after Sandy Hook, a measure to require expanded background checks died on the Senate floor.
Well, I know Williamson or Gabbard didn't make it, but I thought John Delaney somehow wormed his way.
Before, I'm the only one up here who's ever beat the NRA. Only one ever beat the NRA nationally. I'm the guy that brought the Brady Bill into focus and became law. And so that's number one. Number two, after Sandy Hook, a number of things happened. It went from a cause to a movement. Look what's happened now. Mothers, the organization, Mothers Against Violence, gun violence. We've seen what's happened again. Now we have all these young people marching on Washington, making sure that things are going to change. There has been a sea change. Those proposals I put forward for the president had over 50% of members of the NRA supporting them, and overwhelmingly the rest of the people supporting them. Now the numbers are much higher because they realize what I've been saying and we've all been saying is correct. Over 90% of the American people think we have to get assault weapons off the street, period. And we have to get buybacks and get them out of their basements. So the point is, things have changed, and things have changed a lot. And now what's happening is, and by the way Beto handled, excuse me for saying Beto, what Congressman...
That's all right. Beto's good.
The way he handled what happened in his hometown.
That was weird. I didn't understand that at all.
Look in the eyes of those people, to see those kids, to understand those parents, you understand the heartache.
But this is the problem.
We are ready to do this.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. You did bring up assault weapons here.
What is this interaction?
You did bring up assault weapons here.
I know it's not important, but that was just weird.
Executive orders. Senator Harris, you have said that you would take executive action on guns within your first 100 days, including banning imports of AR-15 assault weapons.
That's right.
President Obama, after Sandy Hook, more than 23 executive actions, and yet here we all are today. In recent days, former Vice President Biden has said about executive orders, some really talented people are seeking the nomination. They said, I'm going to issue an executive order. Biden saying there's no constitutional authority to issue that executive order when they say I'm going to eliminate assault weapons, saying you can't do it by executive order any more than Trump can do things when he says he can do it by executive order. Does the vice president have a point there?
Some things you can, many things you can't.
Let's let the senator answer.
Well, I mean, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
Go fuck yourself.
And yes, we can, because I'll tell you something. The way that I think about this is I've seen more autopsy photographs than I care to tell you.
I cannot believe she out-Bidened Biden by, oh. Remember Yes We Can when Obama said that? You'd know that, wouldn't you, Joe? Wouldn't you, Joe? Hey, Joe. Instead of saying no, we can't. All right, I'm gonna leave this alone. It's not important.
To have drills, elementary, middle, and high school students, where they are learning about how they have to hide in a closet or crouch in a corner if there is a mass shooter.
Yep, that one's going in the Obama collection.
I was talking about this at one of my town halls, and this child, it was 8 years old probably, came up to me. It was like it was a secret between the two of us, and he tugged on my jacket and he said, I had to have one of those drills. It is traumatizing our children. El Paso, And Beto, God love you for standing so courageously in the midst of that tragedy. You know, people asked me in El Paso, they said, you know, because I have a long-standing record.
It's actually Congressman Beto, you fucking asshole.
Is responsible for what happened. And I said, well, look, I mean, obviously he didn't pull the trigger, but he's certainly been tweeting out the ammunition.
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, do you still stand by what you said on an executive order?
What I said was the question, speak to constitutional scholars. If, in fact, we could say, by the way, you can't own the following weapons, period. They cannot be sold anymore. Check with constitutional scholars. Now,
Mr. Vice President, thank you.
Could I tell you what you
O'Rourke, I want to come to you on this. I'm going to work down the row here, but I do want to come to Congressman O'Rourke because I know this is personal to you. El Paso is your hometown. Some on this stage have suggested a voluntary buyback for guns in this country. You've gone further. You said, quote, Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s will have to sell them to the government, all of them. You know the critics call this confiscation. Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this work?
I am, if it's a weapon that was designed to kill people on a battlefield.
He just completely answered that from a right-wing, well, whatever. It's fine. It's Beto.
Inside of your body because it was designed to do that so that you would bleed to death on a battlefield and not be able to get up and kill one of our soldiers. When we see that being used against children, and in Odessa, I met the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was shot by an AR-15, and that mother watched her bleed to death over the course of an hour because so many other people were shot by that AR-15 in Odessa and Midland. There weren't enough ambulances to get to them in time. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
Congressman, thank you.
And I want to say this. I'm listening to the people of this country the day after.
Do we count hell as a swear? Do you have to drink to that?
Arkansas, to meet with those who are selling
Maybe,
AR-15s and AK-47s and those who are buying those weapons. And you might be surprised, there was some common ground there. Folks who said, I would willingly give that up, cut it to pieces. I don't need this weapon to hunt, to defend myself. It is a weapon of war. So let's do the right thing, but let's bring everyone in America into the conversation. Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, and non-gun owners alike.
Make a point.
Congressman, thank you. I want to bring in Senator Klobuchar on this because you've often talked about your uncle and the proud hunters back home in Minnesota. So I wanted to get your response to Congressman O'Rourke tonight. Where do you stand on mandatory gun buybacks?
I so appreciate what the congressman's been doing, and I want to remind people here that what unites us is so much bigger than what divides us. Everyone up here favors an assault weapon ban. Everyone up here favors magazine limitations, which, by the way, would have made a huge difference if that was in place in El Paso, in that store where all those ordinary people showed such extraordinary courage, and certainly in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay. This might go on for about two more hours of.
In 1 minute, and it still wasn't enough to save those people. That's what unites us.
Yeah.
You know what else unites us?
You know
I'll
what?
tell you this.
Here we go.
What unites us is that right now on Mitch McConnell's desk are 3 bills. Universal background checks, closing the Charleston loophole, and passing my bill to make sure that domestic abusers don't get AK-47.
Senator Klobuchar.
We want to get something done. And I personally think we should start with a voluntary buyback program. That's what I think, David. But I want to finish this because if you want action now, we got to send the message to Mitch McConnell. We can't wait until one of us gets in the White House. We have to pass those bills right now to get this done.
Senator
because we
Klobuchar.
cannot spare another innocent life.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to turn to Senator Booker because you have said just this week about guns and about the candidates on this stage that the differences do matter. Those were your words. You have argued if you need a license to drive a car in this country, you should have a license.
I'm also going to make another prediction. You're not going to hear from Andrew Yang for another 20 minutes. That is my big guess of the night.
If Democrats can't get universal background checks, how would you get this done? And can you name one Republican colleague of yours in the Senate right now who would be on board with this idea?
So background checks and gun licensing, these are agreed to by overwhelmingly the majority of Americans. 83% of Americans agree with licensing. This is the issue. Look, I grew up in the suburbs. It was about 20 years.
I'm sorry. As soon as they start with this I grew up somewhere shit, you know it's just 5 minutes of fluff until they get to their fucking point. Let's see if he's still talking about it.
This has been a crisis for me. It's why I was the first person to come out for guns.
Yep.
Happy that people like
Beto did a good job, and Obama did a good job, and guns are bad. Now let's see.
But this is what I'm sorry about. I'm sorry that it had to take issues coming to my neighborhood or personally affecting Beto to suddenly make us demand change. This is a crisis of empathy in our nation. We are never going to solve this crisis if we have to wait for it to personally affect us.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blooming for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world that I grew up in. And let me tell you about the world real quick.
Seen what the carnage creates in communities like mine, because we forget national shootings, these mass shootings are tragedies, but the majority of the homicide victims come from neighborhoods like mine. Nobody has ascended to the White House that will bring more personal passion on this issue. I will fight this and bring a fight to the NRA and the corporate gun lobby like they have never seen before.
Senator Booker,
Believe
thank you.
me.
A quick follow-up, though, because Americans watching tonight know the reality of Congress in Washington. I asked, do you have a Republican colleague in the Senate who would be on board with this idea to get this done?
You know, if that was the attitude when Strom Thurmond had the longest filibuster ever.
Didn't he just have a long-ass answer to this bullshit that basically amounted to, I'm gonna fight the NRA? All right, let's...
Protect the citizenry. Think
All right,
about this.
protect the citizenry. Okay, cool. What's next?
Than every single war in this country combined
All right,
from
the
the Revolutionary
wars.
War till now. This is not a side issue to me. It is a central issue to me. That is the kind of fight.
Hey, Dunkel, we're watching the Democrat debates. They're live.
In communities like mine, we must awaken a more courageous empathy in this country so that we stand together and fight together and overwhelm those Republicans who are not even representing their constituency. Because the majority of Americans, the majority of gun owners agree with me, not the corporate gun lobby. It is time for a movement on this issue, and I will lead it.
Senator Booker, thank you. Senator Warren, I want to come to you next, because you have actually said in recent days that there are things you can get done with Republicans in the Senate. What can you get done on gun control?
So let's start by framing the problem the right way. We have a gun violence problem in this country. The mass shootings are terrible, but they get all the headlines. Children die every day on streets, in neighborhoods, on playgrounds. People die from violence, from suicide and domestic abuse. We have a gun violence problem in this country, and we agree on many steps we could take to fix it. My view on this is it's not going to be one and done on this. We're going to do it, and we're going to have to do it again, and we're going to have to come back some more until we cut the number of gun deaths in this country significantly. But here's the deal. The question we need to ask is, when we've got this much support across the country, 90% of Americans want to see us do, I like registration, want to see us do background checks, want to get assault weapons off the streets. Why doesn't it happen? And the answer is corruption, pure and simple. We have a Congress that is beholden to the gun industry.
Okay. All right.
And unless we're willing to address that head on and roll back the filibuster, we're not going to get anything done on guns. I was in the United States Senate when 54 senators said, let's do background checks, let's get rid of assault weapons. And with 54 senators, it failed because of the filibuster. Until we attack the systemic problems, we can't get gun reform in this country. We've got to go straight against the industry, and we've got to change Congress so it doesn't just work for the wealthy and well-connected, so it works for the people.
Senator Warren, thank you.
I gotta say, that wasn't a bad answer.
Filibuster, which means you would need simply a simple majority in a Republican Senate to get something done. I want to turn to Senator Sanders on this, because you've said before of this, if Donald Trump supports ending the filibuster, which he's talked about himself, you should be nervous.
God.
Would you support ending the filibuster?
No, but what I would support absolutely is passing major legislation, the gun legislation that people here are talking about, Medicare for all, climate change legislation that saves the planet. I will not wait for 60 votes to make that happen. And you could do it in a variety of ways. You could do that through budget reconciliation law. You have a vice president who will, in fact, tell the Senate what is appropriate and what is not, what is in order and what is not. But I want to get back to a point that Elizabeth made, and that, in fact, in terms of gun issues, and picking up on Corey and Beto and everybody else, what we are looking at is a corrupt political system. And that means whether it is the drug companies or the insurance companies or the fossil fuel industry determining what's happening in Washington, or in this case, you got an NRA, which has intimidated the President of the United States and the Republican leadership. I am proud that year after year I had an F rating from the NRA. And as president, I will not be intimidated by the NRA.
Senator Sanders, thank you.
May I respond?
Can I?
We've been hearing a lot about what's been happening here in Texas. Only a few weeks ago, the deadliest massacre of Latinos in modern U.S. history happened in this state, in El Paso. So the fear among Latinos, and you know this, is very real. So let me start with an issue that is causing a lot of division in this country, immigration. Vice President Biden, as a presidential candidate in 2008, you supported the border wall, saying, unlike most Democrats, I voted for 700 miles of fence. This is what you said. Then you served as vice president in an administration that deported 3 million people, the most ever in U.S. history. Did you do anything to prevent those deportations? I mean, you've been asked this question before and refused to answer, so let me try once again. Are you prepared to say tonight that you and President Obama made a mistake about deportations? Why should Latinos trust you?
What Latinos should look at is comparing this president to the president we have is outrageous, number one. We didn't lock people up in cages. We didn't separate families. We didn't do all of those things, number one. Number two, by the time this is the president who came along with the DACA program. No one had ever done that before.
He's going for it. He's really going to try it.
Desk saying he wants to find a pathway for the 11 million undocumented in the United States of America. This is the president who's done a great deal. So I'm proud to have served.
He's really fucking going for it.
As president, there's several more things because things have changed. I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge.
They did put him in cages.
People are seeking asylum.
All right, let's see. Let's see if they let him get away with this.
We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come. I would change the order that the president just changed, saying women who were being beaten and abused could no longer claim that as a reason for asylum. And by the way, retrospectively, you know, the 25th anniversary of the violence.
They're going to snipe him. I don't think they will. I think they're going to let him get away with this fucking answer, but let's see.
The past, the Violence Against Women Act now.
But you didn't answer the question. The question is, did you make a mistake with those deportations?
The president did the best thing that was able to be done at the
time. How about
you? I'm the vice president of the United States.
Secretary Castro, would you want to respond to Vice President Biden?
You know,
and let me put this in context, because your party controlled the White House and Congress in 2009 and didn't pass immigration reform. And this broke a promise made by President Barack Obama to Latinos. So why should voters trust Democrats now? I mean, now it is even more difficult, as you know, because you need Republican votes in the Senate. So are you willing, for instance, to give up DACA or give up a path to citizenship or even agree to build a wall in order to legalize 10.5 million undocumented immigrants?
Jorge, thank you very much for that question. And look, I agree that Barack Obama was very different from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a dark heart when it comes to immigrants. He built his whole political career so far on scapegoating,
no one's even arguing,
otherizing migrants.
Okay.
And that's very different for Barack Obama. But my problem with Vice President Biden, and Corey pointed this out last time, is every time something good about Barack Obama comes up, he says, oh, I was there. That's me too. And then every time somebody questions part of the administration that we were both part of, he says, well, that was the president. I mean, he wants to take credit for Obama's work, but not have to answer to any questions. I mean,
Vice President Biden, you have,
I don't get that.
You have 45 seconds.
All right.
What I said.
Let me just say that I was the first candidate in early April to put forward an immigration plan. You know why? Because I'm not afraid of Donald Trump on this issue. I'm not going to backpedal. I'm not going to pretend like I don't have my own vision for immigration. So we're not going to give up DACA. We're not going to give up protections for anybody. I believe that on January 20th, 2021, we're going to have a Democratic president. We're going to throw out Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn and have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House. And we're going to pass immigration reform within the first 100 days.
Vice President, 45 seconds.
I did not say I don't stand. I stand with Barack Obama all 8 years, good, bad, and indifferent. That's where I stand. I did not say I did not stand with him.
All right, let's see if he answers the question.
Hundreds of children have been separated
See?
from their parents at the border.
He just walked the fuck away from it.
So the largest immigration rate
All
in
right.
a decade. You want to replace ICE, the agency in charge of rounding up undocumented immigrants. So how would you deal with the millions of immigrants who arrive legally?
I fucking told you.
Their visas, and how would you stop hundreds of thousands of Central Americans who want to migrate to the U.S.?
Well, I start with a statement of principles, and that is, in this country, immigration does not make us weaker, immigration makes us stronger. I want to see us expand
Biden means Joker and Smash.
and create a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers, but also for their grandparents and for their cousins, for people who overstayed student visas, and for people who came here to work in the fields. I want to have a system that is a path to citizenship that is fair and achievable. Down at the border, we've got to rework this entirely. A system right now that cannot tell the difference in the threat posed by a terrorist, a criminal, and a 12-year-old girl is not
Nasty
a
town.
system
That is
that
fucking
is
weird.
keeping us safer,
That is
and
pretty
it is
awful.
not serving our values.
Mr. Yang.
We need.
And
I
here,
wanna add
here
one
comes
more
Yang.
part on this.
How much time was that? How much time was that? Was that 20 minutes?
At the border, in no small part because we have withdrawn help from people in Central America who are suffering. We need to restore that help. We need to help establish and reestablish the rule of law so that people don't feel like they have to flee for their lives. We have a crisis that Donald Trump has created and hopes to profit from politically. We have to have the courage to stand up and fight back.
Mr. Yang, it is true that in the last few years we have seen the most severe anti-immigrant measures, from putting kids in cages to limiting asylum for people fleeing gangs and domestic violence. But it is also true that about 1 million immigrants enter the U.S. legally every year. So are you willing to raise the number of legal immigrants from 1 million to 2 million per year? And should there be a merit system, as President Trump wants?
So, yeah, I'm sorry, did you ask me or?
Mr. Yang.
I already said it, okay. Sorry.
Oh my God.
My father grew up on a peanut farm in Asia with no floor, and now his son is running for president. That is the immigration story that we have to be able to share with the American people. If you look at our history, almost half of Fortune 500 companies were founded by their immigrants or children of immigrants, and rates of business formation are much higher in immigrant communities. We have to say to the American people, immigrants are positive for our economic and social dynamism, and I would return the level of legal immigration to the point it was under the Obama-Biden administration. I think we have to compete for talent, and I am the opposite of Donald Trump in many ways. He says build a wall. I'm going to say to immigrants, come to America, because if you come here, your son or daughter can run for president. The water is great, and this is where you want to build a company, build a family, and build a life. This country has been a magnet for human capital for generations. If we lose that, we lose something integral to our continued success, and that is where I would lead as president.
Alcalde Pitt, tengo una pregunta para usted.
Gracias.
Alcalde Pitt, 8
The
out of
water's
10
great.
Latinos in Texas fear another mass
That
shooting
wasn't
targeting
interesting,
them. This is according to a new Univision poll. President Trump has
Interesting
called
line with
Mexican
Flint
immigrants
considered.
rapists and killers, tried to ban Muslims from entering the country, and separated children from their parents. His supporters have chanted, build a wall and send her back. Do you think that people who support President Trump and his immigration policies are racist?
Anyone who supports this is supporting racism. Este es racismo y es sencillo.
Uh-oh.
The only people, though, who actually buy into this president's hateful rhetoric around immigrants are people who don't know any. We have an opportunity to build an American majority around immigration reform. In my community, a group of conservative Republicans rallied around an individual, a beloved local individual who was deported when he went into ICE to try to get his paperwork sorted out, because they never thought it would happen to him. In some of the most conservative rural areas of Iowa, I have seen communities that embraced immigration grow, and it's why part of my plan for revitalizing the economies of rural America includes community renewal visas that would allow cities and towns and counties that are hurting not only for jobs but for population to embrace immigration as we have in my city. You know, the only reason that South Bend is growing right now, after years of shrinking.
What the fuck is this gringo on about? Well, it's interesting you ask. Pete Buttigieg is like Beto O'Rourke 2.0. Where he can just say something in 30 fucking minutes that you can say in one sentence. In fact, when he says something, listen for Pete Buttigieg's classic, I support blah, 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 but I also support, listen for that.
Reform happened in the 1980s. We have to actually engage the American majority around the opportunities for not just growth in small communities, but our values, values of welcome, values of faith that all argue for us to manage this humanely and in a way that marries our values with our laws.
Congresista Beto O'Rourke, una pregunta para usted. In an interview 8 months ago, you were asked what to do with the so-called overstayers, people who come with a visa and then stay. And you said, I don't know. Do you have an answer now?
I do, and if you read the rest of that article in the Washington Post, I talked about harmonizing our entry-exit system with Mexico in the same way that we do with Canada. I think that could help us to keep a handle on visa overstays, but I think the larger question that we're trying to get at is how do we rewrite this country's immigration laws in our own image, in the image of Houston, Texas, the most diverse city in the United States of America.
All right. Drink if he doesn't mention a single policy.
States of America, safe not despite the fact that we are a city of immigrants, safe because we are a city of immigrants. Conocemos que si queremos asegurar nuestras comunidades.
No, Beto, stop! Did you not learn your lesson from last time?
I will lead an effort to make sure that we rewrite our immigration laws in that way. Never cage another child. Make sure that there is accountability and justice for the 7 lives lost under our care and our custody, but also face the fact that Democrats and Republicans alike voted to build a wall that has produced thousands of deaths of people trying to cross to join family or to work a job, that we have been part of deporting people, hundreds of thousands just in the Obama administration alone, who posed no threat to this country, breaking up their families. Democrats have to get off the back foot. We have to lead on this issue because we know it is right. Legalize America. Begin with those more than 1 million dreamers. Make them U.S. citizens right now in this, their true home country. And extend that
to be clear, the only thing close to a policy he said was legalize America.
System to come to this country and add to our greatness here.
Thank you, George.
Jorge, thank you. We're going to take a quick...
There the fuck it is. That is Beto O'Rourke at perhaps his most regular. Come on. Ten candidates, only 2 of them worth half an inch, half a pound of salt. Yeah, but that's peak Beto O'Rourke for you. In 10 minutes, managed to say, fucking legalize America as his policy. It's incredible. Fucking incredible. Afghanistan? Oh, is this some pro-war propaganda? Here we go. Oh, I'm ready. You also have to take a shot if Bernie's hard read about adverts is true.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you, Bernie.
Oh, I see.
Okay, imagine the morning. I'm talking about a good morning. Imagine starting your day with friends. Better than that. You know, like the crazy smart friend who always keeps you in the know.
This fucking idiot! Come on. No, it's just news propaganda. It's propaganda for shitty news. Okay. Imagine if your friends woke up with you every morning and told you to, you know, purchase goods from companies that are owned by Raytheon. You are not immune to propaganda. That's true. But that doesn't mean you can't see most of it. Aside from politics, I hope you're doing okay. Yeah, I'm doing just fine. I'm satisfied with Bernie and Yang. I just wish he had more than 2 minutes to speak and he wasn't interrupted every other syllable. Yeah, reset that Yang timer. What was it before? 13 minutes? Yeah, put it back. Put it back on. What if you saw an ad for WinRAR right now? I don't know. I guess I'd buy it. As any reasonable person would. Do we count the ad break? No, no. As soon as they're back at the stage, we'll call it again. Also, these dickheads don't have anything interesting to say. I'll prove it.
He brought energy. That was his first, I think, hurdle he had to clear. He brought passion to this effort, and I also thought he brought a nice, it was a gesture to...
Yeah, Joe Biden brought passion and energy. Only the finest reporting from these fucking mongrels. And I mean, honestly, like, you know, I get it. I think Joe Biden wastes my fucking time when he talks, but, you know, he is the front runner. So if you got to hear him, yeah, I'll turn the volume up. But does anyone here really want to listen to what any of these two dumbasses right now have to say and their shitty opinion? I mean, I'm going to go back anyway just to see.
From where we are here on campus, that's where Pooja Lodia is with our affiliate KTRK. She's there with the students. Hey, Pooja, what's the reaction so far?
What's the reaction, bud?
Well, Devin, we are seeing a lot of excitement, a lot of cheers out here. Actually, almost 2,000 students registered to be right here at TSU's official debate watch party. I would say the biggest cheers we've seen would be anytime any one of the candidates have brought up historically black colleges and universities. We've also seen
Are you sure it wasn't Andrew Yang?
The times that those candidates have brought up former President Barack Obama. I want to go real quickly to a couple of students. Quick, tell me which candidates have impressed you the most tonight.
I'm going to say Joe Biden. I think he really likes black people, and I'm black, so I think that's he's someone who has my vote. Yeah, I'm going to have to second that. Joe Biden is just a really good guy. Really love him. He had a really great answer for Kamala.
And schools and classes were actually canceled today. Again, a lot of excitement and a lot of pride in being right here at TSU. Back to you, Devin.
All right, Pooja Lodia with our affiliate KTRK there with the students here at Texas Southern University, the first historically black college and university to host one of these debates. A lot of excitement here. We've seen clashes on healthcare, immigration, racism, and there at the end on the president's legacy, vice president's legacy, rather, with President Obama. Much more ahead here in Texas. Stay with us on ABC News Live. Our full political team will be standing by after the debate, and we'll send you back now to the debate.
Mute and dub, or I'm going to do it.
Right now.
Do I have to dub every fucking person? It's impossible. Here, I'll dub the crowd. That's my crowd impression of people you can't hear. Afghanistan, Ethiop-Syrian border, Mogadishu. Notre Dame, it caught on fire across America. We burned down this forest. Ports of entry. Guantanamo, where my father got locked up. Ground Zero, where my father got arrested. America's most watched newscast.
The Southern University in Houston, the Democratic debate.
Welcome back. We had to take a quick break so that we could get Bernie some water. The poor guy sounds like a fucking horse that's been kicked in the throat. But hopefully this will go a lot smoother now. Maybe we'll be able to ask him a fucking question or two. And we'll see if Andrew Yang can survive. We have starved him for 3 days. If he wants to be on the stage, he has to earn it.
I would not repeal the tariffs on day one, but I would let the Chinese know that we need to hammer out a deal, because right now the tariffs are pummeling producers and farmers in Iowa who have absolutely nothing to do with the imbalances that we have with China. A CEO friend of mine was in China recently, and he said that he saw pirated U.S. intellectual property on worker workstations to the tune of thousands of dollars per head. And he said, one, how can my workers compete against that? And two, think about all the lost revenue to American companies. So the imbalances are real, but we have to let the Chinese know that we recognize that President Trump has pursued an arbitrary and haphazard trade policy that has had victims on both sides. So no to repealing the tariffs immediately, but yes to making sure we come to a deal that addresses the concerns of American companies and American producers.
Mayor Pete, let me take that question. Let me take that question to you, because if you've seen President Trump's tweets, he says what's going to happen here is the Chinese are just going to wait him out so they can get a Democrat who they can take advantage of. How do you think about China? We've seen President Trump call President Xi both an enemy and a friend.
Well, the president clearly has no strategy. You know, when I first got into this race, I remember President Trump scoffed and said he'd like to see me making a deal with Xi Jinping. I'd like to see him making a deal with Xi Jinping.
What's going on in here? It's the Democratic debates.
It's one more example of a commitment not made. When that happens on the international stage, people take note. Not just our competitors, our adversaries, but also our allies take note of the inability of the United States to keep its word or follow through on its plans. And when that happens, there are serious consequences. We saw it at the G7, the leaders of some of the greatest powers and economies of the world sitting to talk about one of the greatest challenges in the world, climate change, and there was literally an empty chair where American leadership could have been. The problem is, this is a moment when American leadership is needed more than ever, whether it's in Hong Kong, where those protesters for democracy need to know that they have a friend in the United States, or anywhere around the world where increasingly we see dictators throwing their weight around. The world needs America, but it can't be just any America.
Would you repeal the tariffs?
I would have a strategy that would include the tariffs as leverage, but it's not about the tariffs. Look, what's going on right now is a president who has reduced the entire China challenge into a question of tariffs, when what we know is that the tariffs are coming down on us more than anybody else, and there's a lack of a bigger strategy.
Senator Klobuchar, you've actually supported the tariffs on steel.
What we've got right now, though, George,
well, I'm
it's not
fucked.
a focused tariff on steel. What he
I didn't think you were going to ask that.
Tariffs on our allies. He has put us in the middle of this trade war, and he is treating our farmers and our workers like poker chips in one of his bankrupt casinos. And if we are not careful, he is going to bankrupt this country. One forecast recently says that it has already cost us 300,000 jobs. All right? There is soybeans that are mounting up in bins all over the Midwest,
Mario
in my
is
state of
fucking
Minnesota,
gay, all right?
and in Iowa. So what I think we need to do is to go back to the negotiating table. That's what I would do. I wouldn't have put all these tariffs in place, and I wouldn't have had a trade policy where on August 1st he announces he's going to have tariffs on $300 billion of goods. On August 13th, he cuts it in half. A week later, he says he's going to reduce taxes. The day after that, he says he's going to do it. The leaders of the world are watching this, and it undermines our strength as a nation. And yes, we want fair trade, but we must work with the rest of the world. And he has made a mockery of focused trade policy, which I think means enforcement, like we've done in northern Minnesota, passing bills, getting President Obama to do more on that, so that our workers can benefit. So we are importing, exporting goods, and making sure that is a competitive policy, where our goal is that we are making things, inventing things, and exporting to the world. He is defeating that goal.
Secretary Castro, you actually in one of the previous debates identified China as the most serious national security threat to our country. I want to pick up on what Senator Klobuchar was saying, though. She said she'd go back to the negotiating table. The question is, what do you do for leverage? Where do you get it?
Well, look, I agree with those who have said that this erratic, haphazard trade war is hurting American families. As Senator Klobuchar said, 300,000 American jobs. It's estimated that it's cost $600 to the average American family. Just a couple of days ago, 60% of Americans said that they believe that we're in for a recession next year. So when I become president, I would immediately begin to negotiate with China to ratchet down that trade war. We have leverage there. I also believe, though, that we need to return to a leader when it comes to things like human rights. We have millions of Uyghurs, for instance, in China, that right now are being imprisoned
Millions
and
of
mistreated.
what?
And in North Korea, this president is elevating a dictator. We need to stop that. We need to return to ensuring that America leads again on human rights. When it comes to this trade war, I would immediately begin ratcheting that trade war down. We have leverage in that discussion.
Senator Warren, let me bring you in on this conversation. President Obama signed the Trans-Pacific Partnership. In part, it was designed to rein in China, to bring China in to some kind of regulation. What do you think he got wrong?
So our trade policy in America has been broken for decades. And it has been broken because it works for giant multinational corporations and not for much of anyone else. These are giant corporations that, shoot, if they can save a nickel by moving a job to a foreign country, they'll do it in a heartbeat. And yet, for decades now, who's been whispering in the ears of our trade negotiators? Who has shaped our trade policy? It's been the giant corporations. It's been their lobbyists and their executives. The way we change our trade policy in America is, first, the procedures. Who sits at the table? I want to negotiate trade with unions at the table. I want to negotiate it with small farmers at the table. I want to negotiate it with environmentalists at the table. I want to negotiate with human rights activists at the table. And you asked the question about leverage. If I can just respond to that one. The leverage? Are you kidding? Everybody wants access to the American market. That means that we have the capacity to say right here in America, you want to come sell goods to American consumers, then you've got to raise your standards. You've got to raise your labor standards, and you've got to raise your environmental standards so our companies can compete on a level playing field. We can use trade not to undermine American workers and not to undermine American farms and not to undermine small businesses in this country. We can use trade to help build a stronger economy.
Senator Harris, how would your trade policy be?
I gotta admit, because I'm not really in it for Warren, but she's had a few good answers tonight.
Which is that we've got a guy in the White House who has been erratic on trade policy. He conducts trade policy by tweet, frankly born out of his fragile ego. It has resulted in farmers in Iowa with soybeans.
All right, she's gonna shit talk Trump a bit more so that the clip goes out, tries to goad him into something, not answer the fucking question. Khonjin, real shit, why do you have Premiere pinned to the taskbar twice? I have one that's pirated and one that isn't, and that's why I had to get a actual version of it for work. Also, I hope you don't mind that I'm interrupting fucking what's her face.
Relationship.
It's complicated. Okay, cool. Didn't miss much. Did you know she officiated the gay wedding? ABC would like you to remember that Kamala officiated the gay wedding. Oh shit, I had no idea that she saved the gays. It's pretty good.
We need a partner on the issue of North Korea, but the bottom line is this. Donald Trump, in office on trade policy, you know, he reminds me of that guy in The Wizard of Oz, you know, when you pull back the curtain, it's a really small dude.
Okay.
There is a reason why.
Oh my
in
God.
the last 45 years, the average American today, despite an explosion of technology and worker productivity, is not making a penny more than he or she made 45 years ago. And one of the reasons is that for decades we have had disastrous trade policies. And I gotta say to my good friend Joe Biden, Joe and I strongly disagree on trade. I helped lead the opposition to NAFTA and PNTR, which cost this country over 4 million good-paying jobs. And what happened is people who had those jobs ended up getting other jobs, making 50% of what they made in manufacturing. So Trump obviously hasn't a clue. Trump thinks that trade policy is a tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning. What we have got to do is develop a trade policy that represents workers, represents the farmers in the Midwest and elsewhere who are losing billions right now because of Trump's policy. A trade policy which understands that if a company shuts down in America and goes abroad and then thinks they're going to get online to get a lucrative federal contract under Bernie Sanders, they got another guess coming.
Vice President Biden, he invoked your name.
Yeah. Well,
all right,
look,
let's see this.
We're either going to make the policy or China's going to make the rules of the road. We make up 25% of the world economy. We need another 25% to join us. And I think Senator Warren is correct. At the table has to be labor, and at the table have to be environmentalists. The fact of the matter is, China, the problem isn't the trade deficit. The problem is they're stealing our intellectual property. The problem is they're violating the WTO. They're dumping steel on us. That's a different issue than whether...
I'm going to take a guess and say that he might not actually confront Bernie.
We're in a position where if we don't set the rules, we in fact are going to find ourselves with China setting the rules. And that's why you need to organize the world to take on China to stop the corrupt practices that are underway.
Senator Booker, close out this round.
Sure. There's one.
Yeah, there it is. I think that a confrontation with Bernie would have been bad for him, so he just avoided it outright.
Is actually an America isolated, an America alone policy. Exactly. From trade to battling China to the global crisis of climate change, the challenges in the Middle East, he is pulling us away from our allies, out of the Iran deal, out of the Paris Climate Accords. And on trade, he's deciding to take on China while at the same time taking on tariff battles with all of our allies. You literally have him using a national security waiver to put tariffs on Canada. Now look, I'm the only person on the stage that finds Trudeau's hair very menacing, but they are not a national security threat. We cannot go up against China alone. This is a president that has a better relationship with dictators like Duterte and Putin than he does with Merkel and Macron. We are the strongest nation on the planet Earth, and our strength is multiplied and magnified when we stand with our allies in common cause and common purpose. That's how we beat China. That's how we beat climate change on the planet Earth. And that's how American values are the ones that lead on issues of trade and workers' rights.
David.
George, thank you. I want to turn now to our troops overseas into America's longest war.
I still think that Wizard of Oz thing was the fucking funniest thing I've ever seen. I can't believe she got fucking... Okay. Fucking love that. All right.
You bring the troops home in your first term. Others have said in your first year. Senator Warren, we all know the presidency is much different from the campaign trail. President Obama wanted to bring the troops home. President Trump promised to bring the troops home. And you have said of Afghanistan, let's help them reach a peace settlement. It is time to bring our troops home, in your words, starting right now. Would you keep that promise to bring the troops home starting right now with no deal with the Taliban?
Yes. And I'll tell you why. What we're doing right now in Afghanistan is not helping the safety and security of the United States. It is not helping the safety and security of the world. It is not helping the safety and security of Afghanistan. We need to bring our troops home. And then we need to make a big shift. We cannot ask our military to keep solving problems that cannot be solved militarily.
Drinking water.
We're not going to bomb our way to a solution in Afghanistan. We need to treat the problem of terrorism as a worldwide problem. And that means we need to be working with all of our allies, our European allies, our Canadian allies, our Asian allies, our allies in Africa and in South America. We need to work together to root out terrorism. It means using all of our tools. It means economic investment. It means expanding our diplomatic efforts
Our hot
instead
allies
of
are
hollowing out the
ugly
State
allies.
Department
Yeah,
and
dude.
deliberately making it so we have no eyes and ears in many of these countries. We need a foreign policy that is about our security and about leading on our values.
Senator Warren, a quick follow on that, because top U.S. leaders, military leaders on the ground in Afghanistan told me you can't.
Yes, it is. It's whoever gets the nomination goes up against Trump. That's the idea.
Listen to their advice.
I was in Afghanistan with John McCain 2 years ago this past summer. I think it may have been Senator McCain's last
I'm not eating
trip
anything. It's just water with ice.
before he was sick. And I talked to people. We did. We talked to military leaders, American and local leaders. We talked to people on the ground and asked the question, the same one I asked on the Senate Armed Services Committee, every time one of the generals comes through. Show me what
Normally, I'm not so prone to interrupt someone like Elizabeth Warren, but she has a really shitty foreign policy history, so it's kind of hard to listen to, frankly. It would have been an otherwise good answer if not for the fact that she's pretty bad in this regard. It's probably her worst weakness, I'd say, is her foreign policy, but anyways, let's see what's going on.
they have made. They will do anything we ask them to do. But we cannot ask them to solve problems that they alone cannot solve. We need to work with the rest of the world. We need to use our economic tools. We need to use our diplomatic tools. We need to build with our allies. And we need to make the whole world safer, not keep troops bombing in Afghanistan.
Senator Warren, thank you. I do want to stay on this, and I want to turn to Mayor Buttigieg because you're the only...
What's the Andrew Yang timer looking like? What's the Yang Gang timer at?
General Joseph Dunford, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who said in recent days, I'm not going to use the word withdrawal right now. It's our judgment the Afghans need support to deal with the level of violence. If he's not even using the word withdrawal, would you put your promise to bring troops home in the first year on hold to follow the advice?
16 minutes?
General
All right.
Dunford, way under General Dunford in Afghanistan. And today, September 12th, 2019, means that today you could be 18 years old enough to serve, and have not been alive on 9/11. We have got to put an end to endless war. And the way we do it is see to it that that country will never again be used for an attack against our homeland, and that does not require an open-ended commitment of ground troops. Let me say something else, because if there's one thing we've learned about Afghanistan, from Afghanistan, it's that the best way not to be caught up in endless war is to avoid starting one in the first place. And so, when I am president,
What does that sound?
an authorization for the use of military force will have a built-in 3-year sunset. Congress will be required to vote, and a president will be required to go to Congress to seek an authorization. Because if our troops can summon the courage to go overseas, the least our members of Congress should be able to do is
We
summon
started
the
the
courage
war?
to take a
Yeah,
vote
the
on
fuck
whether
we
they ought to
did.
be there. By the way, we also have a president right now who seems to treat troops
Started
as
like
props,
7.
or worse, tools for his own enrichment. We saw what's going on with flights apparently being routed through Scotland just so people can stay at his hotels. I'll tell you, as a military officer, the very first thing that goes through your mind, the first time you ever make eye contact with somebody that you are responsible for in uniform, is do not let these men and women down. This president is doing exactly that. I will not.
Mayor Buttigieg, thank you. I want to turn to Vice President Biden because the concerns about any possible vacuum being created in Afghanistan if you pull the U.S. troops out has been heightened by what we've seen in recent days on the ground in Iraq. When you were Vice President, President Obama turned to you to bring the troops home from Iraq. You have said on the campaign trail, quote, I made sure the president turned to me and said, Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq. There was a major drawdown of U.S. troops, and then ISIS seized, by some estimates, 40% of the territory in Iraq. You then had to send thousands of troops back in. Was it wrong to pull out of Iraq that quickly, and did the move actually help ISIS take hold?
No, it wasn't wrong to pull up. I want to answer an Afghanistan question. I've been in and out of Afghanistan, not with a gun, and I admire my friend for his service. But I've been out of Afghanistan, I think, more than anybody on this, and it's an open secret. you reported a long time ago, George, that I was opposed to the surge in Afghanistan. The whole purpose of going to Afghanistan was to not have a counterinsurgency, meaning that we're going to put that country together. It cannot be put together. Let me say it again. It will not be put together. It's 3 different countries. Pakistan owns the 3 counties, the 3 provinces, and the East. They're not any part of it. The Connies run it. I will go on and on, but here's the point. The point is that it's a counterterrorism strategy. We can prevent the United States from being the victim of terror coming out of Afghanistan.
Yeah, why is he holding a
for
pen?
bases, insist that Pakistanis provide bases for us to airlift from and to move against what we know. We don't need those troops there. I would bring them home. And Joe Dunford's a fine guy, but this has been an internal argument we've had for 8 years. With regard to Iraq, the fact of the matter is that, I should have never voted to give Bush the authority to go in and do what he said he was going to do. The AUMF was designed, he said, to go in and get the Security Council to vote 15 to
I'm
nothing.
just going to
allow
leave that.
inspectors to go in to determine whether or not anything was being done with chemical weapons or nuclear weapons. And when that happened, he went ahead and went anyway without any of that proof. I said something that was not meant the way I said it. I said from that point on, what I was argued against in the beginning, once he started...
How about a magic trick?
Was that,
I'm going to
fact,
make
we were
this
doing it the
pen
wrong way.
disappear.
There was no plan. We should not be engaged. We didn't have the people with us. We didn't have our alliance. We didn't have allies with us, et cetera. And it was later when we came into office, the president turned to me and said, Joe, when they said we had a plan to get out, he turned to the whole security and said, Joe will organize this, get the troops home. My son spent a year in Iraq, and I understand. And we were right to get the combat troops out. The big mistake that was made, which we predicted, was that you would not have a circumstance where the Shia and the Kurds would work together to keep ISIS from moving in.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. I want to turn to Senator Sanders on this because the concern over Afghanistan is very similar to what we saw in Iraq.
All right,
when the
Bernie.
troops came out. ISIS filled that vacuum.
What you gonna do
make
here?
Of people out there who are worried that if we pull out U.S. troops too quickly from Afghanistan, it will create safe haven all over again, like the plotters of 9/11.
David, let me answer that, but let me just comment on something that the Vice President said. You talked about the big mistake in Iraq and
All right.
the surge.
Okay.
The truth is, the big mistake, the huge mistake, and one of the big differences between you and me, I never believed what Cheney and Bush said about Iraq.
There we go.
Voted against the war in Iraq.
There we go.
And helped lead the opposition. And it's sad to say, I mean, I kind of, had the feeling that there would be massive destabilization in that area if we went into that war. As the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I want to pick up on what Pete said. We cannot express our gratitude to all of the men and women who have put their lives on the line to defend us, who have responded to the call of duty. But I think also I am the only person up here to have voted against all 3 of Trump's military budgets. I don't think we have to spend $750 billion a year on the military when we don't even know who our enemy is. I think that what we have got to do is bring this world together. Bring it together on climate change. Bring it together in fighting against terrorism. And make it clear that we as a planet, as a global community, will work together to help countries around the world rebuild their struggling economies and do everything that we can to rid the world of terrorism. But dropping bombs on Afghanistan and Iraq was not the way to do it.
Senator Sanders, thank you. I want to take this to Mr. Yang. You share the
How long has it been?
when we talk about troops in
Yang
Afghanistan with the Vice President who was in the
got a
Situation
sub.
Room, with senators who are on the Senate Armed Services, the Foreign Relations Committees, with an Afghanistan veteran who is on the stage tonight. As you share the stage with these candidates, what makes you the most qualified on this stage to be Commander-in-Chief?
I've signed a pledge to end the forever wars. We've been in a state of continuous armed conflict for 18 years, which is not what the American people want. We have to start owning what we can and can't do. We're not very good at rebuilding countries, And if you want proof, all you have to do is look within our own country at Puerto Rico.
Oh my God.
We've spent trillions of
Blue
dollars
Tang
to
and Coley
unclear
Cow sub.
benefits,
Hell yeah.
lost thousands of lives, and thank you, Pete, for your service. And the goal has to be to rebuild the relationships that have made America strong for decades. I would lead our armed forces with restraint and judgment. What the American people want is simply a president who has the right values and point of view, and they can trust to make the right decisions when it comes to putting our young men and women into harm's way. And that's what I would do as president.
Mr. Yang, thank you.
Jorge.
Thank you very much. Vamos a hablar de América Latina. You haven't been asked about Latin America in the previous debate, so let's begin. Senator Sanders, one country where many immigrants are arriving from is Venezuela. A recent UN fact-finding mission found that thousands have been disappeared, tortured, and killed by government forces in Venezuela. You admit that Venezuela does not have free elections, but still you refuse to call Nicolás Maduro un dictador, a dictator. Can you explain why?
What?
And what are the main differences between your kind of socialism and the one being imposed in Venezuela,
great.
Cuba, and Nicaragua?
Well, first of all, let me be very clear. Anybody who does what Maduro does is a vicious tyrant. What we need now is international and regional cooperation for free elections in Venezuela so that the people of that country can create their own future. In terms of democratic socialism, to equate what goes on in Venezuela with what I believe is extremely unfair. I'll tell you what I believe in terms of democratic socialism. I agree with what goes on in Canada and in Scandinavia, guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right. I believe that the United States should not be the only major country on earth not to provide paid family and medical leave. I believe that every worker in this country deserves a living wage and that we expand the trade union movement. I happen to believe also that what, to me, democratic socialism means is we deal with an issue we do not discuss enough, Jorge, not in the media and not in Congress. You got 3 people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of this country. You got a handful of billionaires controlling what goes on in Wall Street, the insurance companies, and in the media. Maybe, just maybe, what we should be doing is creating an economy that works for all of us, not 1%. That's my understanding of democratic socialism.
Secretary Garcia, you wanted to say a quick response, 45 seconds.
Sure, thank you, Jorge. I'll call Maduro a dictator because he is a dictator. And what we need to do is to, along with our allies, make sure that the Venezuelan people get the assistance that they need, that we continue to pressure Venezuela so that they'll have free and fair elections, and also here in the United States, offer temporary protected status, TPS, to Venezuelans. That is something that the Trump administration has failed to do. For all of his big talk about supporting the Venezuelan American community, he has failed. I will not. I also believe that we need to do things like a 21st century Marshall Plan for Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, so that people can find safety and opportunity at home instead of having to make the dangerous journey to the United States.
There'll be a lot of interesting stuff in here, I assure you, that I'm interrupting a lot of very important policy. God damn it. Just...
world to places like Africa and Latin America, making their own relationships, strengthening those. The United States needs to strengthen its partnerships in Latin America.
And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to call China, China, because it is.
Let me ask you about Brazil. After the recent fires in the Amazon, some experts suggested that eating less meat is one way to help the environment. You are a vegan since 2014. That's obviously a personal choice. But President Trump and Brazil's President Bolsonaro are concerned that climate change regulations could affect economic growth. So should more Americans, including those here in Texas and in Iowa, follow your diet?
First of all, I want to say no. Actually, I want to translate that.
And I want to thank you for this very important question. I'm glad that we're getting the hard-hitting... He's smiling because there's a funny joke that happened. We missed it. It's really unfortunate.
Let's just be clear. the factory farming going on that's assaulting this corporate consolidation in the agriculture industry. One of the reasons why I have a bill to put a moratorium on this kind of corporate consolidation is because this factory farming is destroying and hurting our environment, and you see independent family farmers being pushed out of business.
And really, I think that I'm the only one on the stage that is vegan. And I'm just going to say it. I'm going to call veganism veganism because that's what it is. And Pete Buttigieg thinks he's cool because he's gay, but I'm a vegan, which is basically 10 times gayer than that. So consider that when you vote for me when I become the president.
Have a shameful reality in America that we send people off to war and they often come home with invisible wounds, hurts, and harms. They're disproportionately homeless. You hear stories about women waiting for months for gynecological care through the VA. It is very important that as we, as a country, understand that we are not going to solve every problem with this.
How did he talk about veganism to this? That is what's really fun about turning down the volume, how that just wildly changes from answering the question.
Home of the brave. It's about time we make this a better home for our bravest.
Congressman O'Rourke, Hurricane Harvey hit this town 2 years ago, and not only is the Amazon burning, Greenland is melting at a record pace. The last 5 years have been the hottest ever recorded, and we have a viewer's question about this. What meaningful action will you take to reverse the effect of climate change, and can we count on you to follow through if your donors are against it?
Thank you for that question, and I just want to thank Barack Obama before we get into this, because climate change is really important, and what unites us is stronger than what divides us. I think that if we work together, if each American builds one part of a solar panel, and then we all meet together in the center of the country and combine it into one big solar panel, I think that will be a good step in the direction of solving racism in this country. And I know racism, and I know that it's not good. And I know that my friends in uniform agree with me that we need to do something about this, and we need to do something about this now. It has been, the time for action has come and passed. And when I'm president, I will enact these changes. You can expect a giant solar panel in the middle of the country in 2020.
For the environmental services that they want to provide, planting cover crops, keeping more land under conservation, using no-till farming, regenerative agriculture can pull carbon out of the air and
let me say another thing, since I apparently have 15 minutes to answer this question. Fuck it.
Let's try to see if we can go very fast, Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. This is the existential crisis of our time.
Oh,
it's,
Christ.
you know, that movie, The Day After Tomorrow? It's today. We have seen a warming in our world.
Have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz? That's today.
Houston, fires in the West. And I think having someone leading the ticket from the Midwest will allow us to talk about this in a different way and get it.
Can the people in the crowds cheering for Amy Klobuchar please quiet down? I know you're excited. But let the woman speak, Jesus.
Bring back the clean power rules that President Obama had worked on. On day 3, I will bring back the gas mileage standards. You can do all that without Congress, which is good. On day 4, 5, and 6, I will, working with Congress and mayors and business people all over the country, introduce sweeping legislation to get at that 2050 goal. And on day 7, you're supposed to rest, but I won't.
Senator
This
Warren.
is what we need to do if we're going to get at climate change. We have to take this on as a crisis that's happening right now.
Please stop fucking talking.
Foreign policy be based around the principle of climate change?
Yes. We need to work on every front on climate change. It is the threat to every living thing on this planet, and we are running out of time. Every time the scientists go back, they say we have less and less time than we thought we had. But that means we've got to use all the tools. One of the tools we need to use are our regulatory tools. I have proposed, following Governor Inslee, that we, by 2028, cut all carbon emissions from new buildings, by 2030, carbon emissions from cars, and by 2035, all carbon emissions from the manufacture of electricity. That alone, those 3, will cut our emissions here in the United States by 70%. We can do this. We also need to help around the world to clean, but understand this one more time. Why doesn't it happen? As long as Washington is paying more attention to money than it is to our future, we can't make the changes we need to make. We have to attack the corruption head on so that we can save our planet.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds.
When I think about this issue, it really is through the lens of my baby nieces who are 1.5 and 3 years old. When I look at what is going to be the world if we do nothing when they turn 20, I am really scared. And when I've been in the United States Senate for now the last 2.5 years, and I look at our counterparts, the Republicans in the United States Senate, they must be looking at their children, and then when they look at the mirror, I don't know what they see, but it's a lack of courage. And this is an issue that, yes, it represents an existential threat. It is.
A policy is coming. I bet anything. I'm sure there's something in here besides stupid fucking anecdotes about children.
And change our behaviors in a way that saves our planet. I've seen it happen in California. I took on as the
I went to California. I saw someone drink gasoline at a gas station and they died. And if we don't get off fossil fuels, that's going to keep happening.
Saw progress. If any of you have been to Los Angeles 20 years ago, you'll remember that sky was brown. You go there now, the sky is blue, and you know why? Because leaders just decided to lead, and we took on these big fossil fuel companies. We have some of the most important and strongest laws in the country, and we made a difference. And my point
Mr.
being,
Hawkins.
I've done it before, and I will lead as president on this issue because we have no time. The clock is ticking, but we need courage, and we need courageous leadership. We can get this done.
Mr. Yang.
Yang timer. What's it at?
On what Elizabeth said, why are we losing to the fossil fuel companies? Why are we losing to the gun lobby and the NRA? And the answer is this. We all know, everyone on the stage knows, that our government has been overrun by money and corporate interests. Now, everyone here has a plan to try and curb those corporate interests, but we have to face facts. Money finds a way. Money will find its way back in. So what is the answer? The answer is to wash the money out with people-powered money. My proposal is that we give every American 100 democracy dollars that you can only give to candidates and causes that you like. This would wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 8 to 1. That is the only way we will win. And as someone running for president, I'll tell you, there's the people on one side and the money on the other. The only way for us to win is if we bring them together.
Is Kamala gonna clash with Yang? No.
I'd like to have an academic discussion now about education. Mr. Yang, we'll stay with you. Here in Houston, the school district is facing yet another year of spending cuts. Like schools across the country, the system faces many challenges. One of them, thousands of students are leaving traditional public schools and going to charter schools. You're the most vocal proponent on this stage for charter schools. You have said that Democrats who want to limit them are, quote, just jumping into bed with teachers' unions and doing kids a disservice. Why isn't taxpayer money better spent on fixing traditional public schools?
Let me be clear, I am pro-good school. I've got a kid, one of my little boys just started public school last week, and I was not there because I was running for president. So we need to pay teachers more because the data clearly shows that a good teacher is worth his or her weight in gold. We need to lighten up the emphasis on standardized tests, which do not measure anything fundamental about our character or human worth. But here's the big one. The data clearly shows that 65 to 70% of our students' outcomes are determined outside of the school. We're talking about time spent at home with the parents, words read to them when they're young, stress levels in the house.
All right,
income,
he seemed ready for this
type of
one.
Neighborhood. We're putting money into schools, and educators know this. We're saying you're 100% responsible for educating our kids, but you can only control 30%. They all know this. The answer is to put money directly into the families and neighborhoods to give our kids a chance to learn and our teachers a chance to teach.
Mayor Buttigieg, 45 seconds to respond.
Step one is appoint a Secretary of Education who actually believes in public education. I believe in public education. And in order to strengthen it, some things are very complex for preparing for a future where knowledge is at your fingertips, but we got
93 RS3. The other good guy is Andrew Yang, the one who was just on.
Some of it is extremely simple. We've just got to pay teachers more. And we've got to lift up the teaching profession. I always think of a story from South Bend of friends who hosted exchange students from Japan. They had a student one year who wanted to be a teacher, and they kept in touch with her when she went back to Japan and to college. She took the exam to try to become a teacher in a society that really regards teachers and compensates teachers well. And she came up just short. So you know what she did? Since she was academically good but couldn't quite make the cut to be a teacher, she had a fallback plan. She became a doctor. That is how seriously some countries treat the teaching profession. If we want to get the results that we expect for our children, we have to support and compensate the teaching profession, respect teachers the way we do soldiers, and pay them more like the way we do doctors.
Senator Warren, to use Mr. Yang's term, are you just jumping into bed with teachers' unions?
Oh, my.
You know, I think I'm the only person on the stage who has been a public school teacher. I've wanted to be a public school teacher since I was in 2nd grade. And let's be clear in all the ways we talk about this, money for public schools should stay in public schools, not go anywhere else. I've already made my commitment. We will have a Secretary of Education who has been a public school teacher. I think this is ultimately about our values. I have proposed a 2-cent wealth tax on the top 1/10 of 1% in this
Is Yang
country.
gonna have a clash
That would
with
give us
Warren?
enough money to start with our babies by providing universal child care for every baby age 0 to 5, universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in this country.
Thank you, Senator.
Raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in this country. Cancel student loan debt for 95% of the folks who've got it.
Thank you, Senator.
And strengthen our unions. This is how we build an America that reflects our values, not just where the money comes from with the billionaires and corporate executives.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds to respond.
My 1st grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation. I think most of us would say that we are not where we are without the teachers who believed in us. I have offered in this campaign a proposal to deal with this, which will be the first in the nation federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap, which is $13,500 a year. Because right now in our public schools, our teachers, 94% of them are coming out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. And that is wrong. I also want to talk about where we are here at TSU and what it means in terms of HBCUs. I have, as part of my proposal, that we will put $2 trillion into investing in our HBCUs for teachers.
Khonjin, I've missed the first half of the debate. Does she always start talking about someone? Yeah, pretty much.
Of a historically black college and university, I will say that it is our HBCUs that disproportionately produce teachers and those who serve in these many professions. But
Thank you, Senator.
But this is a critical point. If a black child has a black teacher before the end of 3rd grade, they are 13% more likely to go to college. If that child has had 2 black teachers,
That's an interesting statistic. I wonder what the implications of that are.
So when we talk about investing in our public education system, it is at the source of so much. When we fix it, that will fix so many other things. We must invest in the potential of our children. And I strongly believe you can judge a society based on how it treats its children, and we are failing on this issue.
Guess what? You're guessing. All right, here's the answer. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and yet we have the highest child poverty rate of almost any country on earth. We have teachers in this country who are leaving education because they can't work 2 or 3 jobs to support themselves, which is why under my legislation, we will move to see that every teacher in America makes at least $60,000 a year. What we will also do is not only have universal pre-K, we will make public colleges and universities and HBCUs debt-free. And what we will also do, because this is an incredible burden on millions and millions of young people who did nothing wrong except try to get the education they need, we are going to cancel all student debt in this country.
Yeah, buddy.
Thank you, Senator.
And
Thank
we
you,
are
Senator.
going to do that by imposing a tax on Wall Street speculation.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Vice President.
Wow,
I wanna
he
come
said
to
how
you
he's
and
gonna
talk
do
to you
it.
about
Take
inequality
notes,
in schools
fuckers.
and race. In a conversation about how to deal with segregation in schools back in 1975, you told a reporter, "I don't feel responsible for the
That
sins
nervous
of my
laugh as soon as she said
I'm
race.
responsible for what the situation is today for the sins of my own generation, and I'll be damned if I feel responsible to pay for what happened 300 years ago." You said that some 40 years ago. But as you stand here tonight, what responsibility do you think that Americans need to take to repair the legacy of slavery in our country?
Well, they have to deal with look, there is institutional segregation in this country. And from the time I got involved, I started
He really brought up okay.
redlining,
I'm gonna let
banks,
this one
making
play
sure
out.
that we are in a position where, look, you talk about education. I propose that what we take is those very poor schools, the Title I schools, triple the amount of money we spend from 15 to 45 billion a year. Give every single teacher a raise to the equal raise of getting out the $60,000 level. Number two, make sure that we bring in to help the teachers deal with the problems that come from home. The problems that come from home, we have one school psychologist for every 1,500
I'm gonna get some
kids
water.
in
I don't give a
America
shit
today.
about what he's saying.
It's crazy. The teachers are and I'm married to a teacher. My deceased wife is a teacher. They have every problem coming to them. We have to make sure that every single child does in fact have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds go to school, not daycare, school. We bring social workers into homes of parents to help them deal with how to raise their children. It's not that they don't want to help, they don't know quite what to do. Play the radio, make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear words. A kid coming from a very poor school, a very poor background, will hear 4 million words fewer spoken by the time they get there.
Okay,
So
what I
much
miss.
No, I'm going to go like the rest of them do, twice over, okay? Because here's the deal. The deal is that we've got this a little backwards. And by the way, in Venezuela, we should be allowing people to come here from Venezuela. I know Maduro. I've confronted Maduro. Number two, you talk about the need to do something in Latin America. I'm the guy that came up with $740 million to see to it those 3 countries, in fact, change their system so people don't have a chance to leave. You're all acting like we just discovered this yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Secretary Castro.
Thank you very much. Well, that's quite a lot. You know, I grew up in one of those neighborhoods that folks have talked about, in a neighborhood that was grappling with the legacy of segregation. In fact, in two public school districts that were involved in a 1973 Supreme Court case challenging how Texas financed its schools. And I know that today our schools are segregated because our neighborhoods are segregated. Right. Now, I have an education plan, like a lot of folks up here, that would pay teachers more, that would recruit diverse ranks of teachers, that would invest in our public schools. But I also believe that we have to connect the dots to uplift the quality of life, to invest in housing opportunity, to invest in job opportunity, to invest in community schools that offer resources like parents able to go back and get their GED and health care.
Which one is the goods? Bernie Sanders and Andrew Yang, the only 2 good guys.
Can prosper. Those are the types of things that we need to do in addition to lifting up our public schools. You asked a second ago about charter schools. Look, it is a myth that charter schools are better than public schools. They're not. And so,
Thank you, Secretary.
While I'm not categorically against charter schools,
Are you saying that you're Yang Gang? Oh, hell yeah. I'm Yang Gang and Bernie bro. I'm all in.
We're coming to you now. It was 65 years ago this year that the Supreme Court outlawed racial segregation in public schools.
I agree with you, Khonjin, but it might be better to have people draw their own conclusions. That is true.
Non-white districts typically receive.
I did answer it because someone asked, but you know what? You're right. Next time it gets asked, I'm just going to say, what do you think?
Less access to computers and often worse outcomes. What is your plan to address segregation? And I'm not just talking about the achievement gap, but I'm talking about the opportunity gap in education.
So I'm hearing a lot of conversations on the stage and the way we talk about communities of color. Look, I live in a black and brown community below the poverty line. I've lived in public housing projects almost for a decade and saw the anguish of parents who are just so deeply frustrated that they don't have a school that serves their genius. I think I'm the only person on the stage, even though I had no formal authority as mayor to run a school system, I stepped up and took responsibility for our schools, and we produced results.
Trust me, I want my student debt cleaned out, but Trump will win again easy. He'll win if we nominate a fucking corporatist. That much is true. That's also why Bernie and Yang, in my view, are the two good guys, because they'll fucking trounce him. But everyone else will get obliterated.
Work for our community. The results speak for themselves. We're now the #1 city in America for beat the odds schools, from high poverty to high performance. Strategies like investing in our children work. And I'll tell you this, I am tired of us thinking about these problems.
What do you think about Castro? What he's been saying seems all right. I don't know. A lot of the shit he says is pretty canned, and he is a corporatist through and through. He's I just don't know what the hell he's doing on the stage, honestly.
Redlining communities, disinvesting in communities, and more than just that, my kids are not only struggling with racial segregation and housing and the challenges of underfunded schools, but they're also struggling with environmental injustice. If you've talked to someone who's a parent of a child who's had permanent brain damage because of lead, you'll know this is a national problem, because there's over 3,000 jurisdictions in America where children have more than twice the blood lead levels of Flint, Michigan.
Thank you.
And so if I'm president of the United States, it is a holistic solution to education, from raising teacher salary, fully funded special education, but combating the issues of poverty, combating the issues of racial segregation, combating the issues of a criminal justice system that takes parents away from their kids, and dealing with environmental justice as a major pillar of any climate policy.
Thank you, Lindsay. One final question coming up. We'll be right back.
And the debates are just getting warmed up. Prepare for another 3 hours of amazing, hard-hitting journalism.
But yeah, my biggest issue with, Julian Castro is that he's not really running on anything specific. He's sort of playing it vague like Pete Buttigieg, where the less said about policies, the better, unless it comes to racism specifically or anything involving immigration. He sort of, when he was polling at 0, he tried to open up with being like, I'm the reparations candidate. And I was like, okay, cool. It's just, it comes off as a lot of bark. Khonjin, I legitimately thought there was an announcer. Seems like they do try to play emotions a little too hard. Oh yeah, no fucking shit. They waste so much goddamn time with that nonsense. It's like a policy fucking desert.
This is ABC News Live. We're right here in the ultimate Thunderdome, where Kamala Harris met someone in fucking Kansas who had a crazy story about how fucked up America is. She probably threw him in jail right after they told the story.
I hate the rep talk, because that shit will cause a bigger separation for all of us. Oh, the reparations, yeah. It's also such a, I feel like it's a pothole when it comes to the debates, because it sucks all the air out of the room for an issue that none of them are actually committed to. Anyone who says they're for reparations is lying. Like, Do you honestly believe any of these fucking people give a rat's ass about reparations?
Democracy for America Chairwoman Yvette Simpson. Great to see you, Yvette. So we were talking before the debate about your expectations.
Yes.
And who's having the best night so far?
I'm gonna say Beto O'Rourke. I really think that what he said about America having less differences than there are things that bring us together, it's just wonderful. Because I agree with that. I was just saying that to my mom the other day, that, like, we're really united and shit. And he gets it. He gets that. And I think that he's gonna really unify this country if he keeps reading off all those great quotes. I really loved The Wizard of Oz, but I don't think that's going to make me vote for Kamala. I'm more of a Star Wars girl myself.
About Julian Castro going hard at Joe Biden. It's getting a bit of blowback on Twitter.
Well,
Do you think there was a fair attack?
I don't think it's fair. I mean, we are preparing for someone who's going to take on Trump. Trump is not going to be nice. And I think at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we're preparing this guy for a rough and tumble thing. And to say to him, oh, you...
Khonjin, not that I'm complaining. I'm surprisingly having fun watching this with you guys. But what made you put on the debate? I'm very interested in politics, and I was going to watch it anyway. And it's very long, so I was like, fuck it. Why not watch it with other people who might either be interested or not interested or might become interested, since there's two fucking people in here who, you know, are actually worth listening to this time around.
A bunch of students. Hey, Pooja, what moments have gotten the biggest response so far there with that watch party?
I'm going to say the absence of John Delaney caused an uproar in the crowd. People have been lighting trash cans on fire and throwing them on stage, but we've had to edit that out, of course, in post. I've received a few burns, but that's what I'm willing to do to make sure that John Delaney is safely represented here on this newscast.
For Texas Southern University, I do want to go to a couple of students here. Tell me, what is the #1 issue that really matters to you in this election?
I'm fucking hungry as shit.
Gun control. Student loans. And that is one of the ones that we've really been hearing a lot of here. A lot of students very interested to hear what these candidates have to say when it comes to student loan forgiveness. That's obviously very important. Back to you, Devin.
All right, Pooja Lodia with our friends at KTRK here tracking the student response to this debate. There is much more debate ahead. We're in the home stretch here as the moderators prepare to take their stations. Stay with us here at ABC News Live. Continuing coverage, we'll bring you back to the debate right now.
We'll be right back as we put Bernie Sanders under resuscitation.
Final round of questions, one question for each candidate. We're going to go in reverse order from the opening statement. And candidates, the question is on the quality of resilience. No president can succeed without resilience. Every president confronts crises, defeats, and mistakes. So I want to ask each of you, what's the most significant professional setback you've had to face? How did you recover from it? And what did you learn from it? Vice President Biden.
I never counted any professional setback I have as a serious setback. There's things that are important, things that are unimportant.
We're going to clear the protesters now. Just 1 minute. Senator Biden, we'll start the clock again.
I'm sorry.
We're sorry. Go ahead.
There's setbacks and there's
Fuck you! Fuck you, Joe!
And I think the most critical setback that can occur to anyone is to lose. Well, my dad had an expression. He said, Joey, it's not a question of succeeding whether you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get up. And he used to say, never explain and never complain. And then go on to say that the only obligation that really matters, the most important thing, is family. And so I was raised to believe that that was the center of everything, family. And it could be judged on based how you treat your family and how you went from there. And I it took, Kierkegaard said, faith sees best in the dark. Right after I got elected, my wife and daughter were killed in an automobile accident, and my two sons are badly injured. And I just been elected, not sworn in. And I lost my faith for a while. I came back. And then later, when my son Bo came home from Iraq and with a terminal disease, and a year and a half later, losing him was like losing part of my soul. But the fact is that I learned that the way you deal with it is you deal with finding purpose in what you do. And that's why I hope he's proud of me today, because he wanted to make sure I didn't run for president, but I stayed engaged. Because when you get hit badly, whether you're losing a job or you're raising a family like my dad, where you have to make that longest walk up the stairs to tell your kid you can't live here anymore, dad lost his job, we've all went through that in some form or another. And it just for me, the way I've dealt with it is finding purpose. And my purpose is do what I've always tried to do and stay engaged in public policy. But there's a lot of people that through a lot worse than I have, get up every single morning, put their feet one foot in front of another without the help I had. They're real heroes out there.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator Warren.
I mentioned earlier, I've known what I wanted to be since second grade. I wanted to be a public school teacher. And I invested early. I used to line my dollies up and teach school. I had a reputation for being tough but fair. By the time I graduated from high school, my family didn't have money for a college application, much less to send me off to 4 years at a university. And my story, like a lot of stories, has a lot of twists and turns. Got a scholarship, and then at 19, got married, dropped out of school, took a minimum wage job, thought my dream was over. I got a chance down the road at the University of Houston. And I made it as a special needs teacher. I still remember that first year as a special needs teacher.
So was the question about like telling their life stories? Because I legitimately don't remember
But at the end of that first year,
what the
I was visibly
purpose
pregnant.
of this is.
And back in the day, that meant that the principal said to me, wished me luck, and hired someone else for the job. So there I am. I'm at home, I got a baby, I can't have a job. What am I gonna do? Here's resilience. I said, I'll go to law school. And the consequence was, I practiced law for about 45 minutes, and then went back to my first love, which is teaching. But it let me get into fights, it gave me new tools, and the reason I'm standing here today is because I got back up, I fought back, I know what's broken, I want to be in the fight to fix it in America.
Thank
That's
you,
why
Senator.
I'm here.
Senator Sanders.
Resilience, to me, means growing up in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York, the son of an immigrant who came to this country without a nickel in his pocket. Professional resilience means to me, George, running for U.S. Senate in Vermont and getting 1% of the vote. Running for governor and getting 2% of the vote. Finally becoming mayor of Burlington, Vermont with 10-vote margin. What resilience means to me is that throughout my political career, I have taken on virtually every powerful special interest in this country. Whether it is Wall Street, whether it is the insurance industry, whether it is the pharmaceutical industry whose corruption and greed is killing people today, whether it is a military-industrial complex or a prison-industrial complex. And I feel confident that given a lifelong record of taking on powerful special interests, of standing up for the working families of this country, that I will be able to take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and create a government and an economy that work for all of us, not just the 1%.
Thank you, Senator Sanders.
Someone wrote in the chat that Yang is 9 out of 10. He's 6.
You know, every office I've run for, whether it be district attorney or attorney general,
I think he's actually
I was told at
5th,
the
but
time,
don't quote me on that.
it can't be done. They said nobody like you has done it before. Nobody is ready for you. When I ran for DA, I won and became the first black woman elected DA in a state of 40 million people in San Francisco. When I ran for Attorney General of California, I was elected because I didn't listen. And I was the only woman black elected Attorney General in the state, in the country. And each time people...
They're actually wasting like a fucking half hour on this question, which is just incredible. Because, you know, they're not auditioning to work at McDonald's. When have you faced setbacks? Because sometimes, you know, there can be busy days at McDonald's and you won't always get the orders out on time. So tell us about how resilient you are, how dedicated you are to the cause. Like, what the fuck? You're gonna rule the free world. Whatever. I'm preaching to the choir here.
And I see these little girls and boys, sometimes even brought by their fathers, and they bring them to me, and I talk to them during these events, and they smile, and they're full of joy, and their fathers tell them, see, don't you ever listen and let anybody ever tell you what you can or cannot be. You have to believe in what can be, unburdened by what has been.
Senator Harris, thank you very much. Mayor Buttigieg.
You know, as a military officer serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and as an elected official in the state of Indiana when Mike Pence was governor, at a certain point, when it came to professional setbacks, I had to wonder whether just acknowledging who I was going to be the ultimate career-ending professional setback. I came back from the deployment and realized that you only get to live one life, and I was not interested in...
The first time an American president nominee has YOLO'd on stage.
What kind of professional setback it would be, especially because, inconveniently, it was an election year in my socially conservative community. What happened was that when I trusted voters to judge me based on the job that I did for them, they decided to trust me and reelected me with 80% of the vote. And what I learned was that trust can be reciprocated, and that part of how you can win and deserve to win is to know what's worth more to you than winning. And I think that's what we need in the presidency right now. We have to know what we are about. And this election is not about any of us up here. It is not about this president, even though it's hard to talk of anything else some days. It's about the people who trust us with their lives. A kid wondering if we're actually going to make their schools safe when they've learned active shooter drills before they've learned to read. A generation wondering whether we will actually get the job done on climate change. And if we hold to that, then it doesn't matter what happens to each of us professionally. Together, we will win a better era for our country.
Mayor Buttigieg, thank you.
Thank you, Timmy. Very inspiring. A+.
I was an unhappy lawyer for 5 whole months, and I left to start a business. And I'm going to share with you all one of the secrets to entrepreneurship. If you want to start something, tell everyone you know you're going to do it. And then you don't have a choice. You put your heart and soul into it, and even though I did that, my company flopped, had its mini rise and maximum fall, lost investors hundreds of thousands of dollars, still owed $100,000 in school debt. My parents still told people I was a lawyer. I guess it was a little easier. So I remember lying on my floor looking up, wondering how it had come to this. Eventually, I picked myself back up. I kept working in small growth companies for another 10 years and eventually had some success. Then after I did have some success, I still remembered how hard it was, how isolating it was, how it feels like your friends no longer want to spend time with you. And so I spent 7 years starting and running a nonprofit that helped train young entrepreneurs around the country, including Sean Wen, who's here in the audience tonight, who left his gilded Wall Street job to become a food entrepreneur in San Antonio. Sean, I hope I made the process a little bit easier for you than it was for me. But the goal of my campaign is to make this an economy that allows us to live our human values and aspirations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yang. Senator Booker.
So my biggest professional setback is embarrassing because a lot of folks know about it. I, with a bunch of tenant leaders in Newark, New Jersey in 2002, took on the political machine, and boy, did they fight back. I had tires on my car slashed, our campaign offices were broken into, my phones were tapped. it became a spectacle, and we lost that election. And here's a bit of advice to everybody. If you're going to have a spectacular failure, have a documentary team there to capture it, because it made for an Oscar-nominated documentary called Street Fight. But then, unfortunately, another setback, it lost in the Oscars to a movie called March of the Dagnap Penguins, for crying out loud. The people in my community, living in the projects, told me, don't give up on the people, and the people won't give up on you. Create bigger and bolder coalitions, and you're going to win. And you know what? We came back 4 years later and won the largest lopsided victory in our city's history. But more than that, the lesson was there. We didn't give up. We were taking on America's toughest problems, from crime to poverty. And we transformed our city.
I don't care about any of these answers. I really don't. I'll turn the volume back up if you guys are, you know, interested in these, but I just don't care. I don't know what the fuck any of these people could say that would make me go, oh shit, oh, I didn't think about that.
Go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. The lesson I learned of resilience is to trust
people,
because the power of the people is always greater than the people.
Since it's movie talk now, what's your favorite film? It's The Shining. It's my favorite movie. Dub them. I think he's almost done. Let's see who's next. Yeah.
Thank you. Congressman O'Rourke.
Thank you, George.
Oh, perfect. My biggest setback was when I ran for president, I didn't know how great this country was. I had to take a stand, look back, and see just how far we've come. Everybody says that it's a bad country, but remember, slavery was once commonplace, and we overcame it because love and understanding was commonplace in our mutual respect for the powers that be. And that is what inspires me to feed the little kids out there, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Latino like me, I mean Irish, but it really doesn't matter, because I don't see color, and neither do you, and neither does anyone else in this country, and that's what I'm fighting for. When I started running for whatever in El Paso, I knew that Texas got a... I knew that... I knew that Texas might get shot up one day, but when it did, that we would get together, that we could see past our differences, and our combined strengths would outshine our weaknesses. And that's what we need right now in our leadership. And if we're going to tackle racist issues like global warming or the trade deficit, we are going to need comprehensive immigration reform.
My challenges and resilience have brought me up here. I grew up with a dad who struggled with alcoholism.
My dad struggles with alcoholism after he saw my poll numbers, which are frankly not going anywhere. And I'm not going anywhere either. I will speak for as long as they allow me to legally do so. And if that means my rotting, near-dead carcass will be stapled to this podium, then by God, with a will and a word, I shall make it happen. I don't know who I'm appealing to, but my hands are big. You like that? That's for... I'm sure there's a Trump jab in here somewhere. I'm actually going to turn it up and see.
They had a rule in place that you got kicked out of the hospital in 24 hours. She was in intensive care.
No, it's an anecdote. Well, anyway, she was in intensive care. It was a rather rough night, and I don't usually take my anger out on people, but this person really had a punchable face, and I just cracked him right in the jaw. And I think Joe will agree with me. Sometimes you just got to fight back, you know? You know what I'm saying? Well, anyways, it's a long shot, and I did this on a dare, but if you want to vote for me, that'd be really appreciated. I have a SoundCloud. Please check it out. Only $1 to get my latest hit, my latest SoundCloud hit. I wish she'd stop talking so that I wouldn't have to do this anymore.
I am from the middle of the country. And I believe if we're going to get things done, that we have to have someone leading the ticket with grit. Someone's going to not just change the policy.
Someone with grit, someone who just inspires toughness when you think about them, someone who's just like a fucking bulldog fighter, and the first person you think of on the stage when you think of tough bulldog fighter is me.
Secretary Castro.
And thank you, George, to Jorge, to Lindsay, and David, and to all of y'all for tuning in tonight. In many ways, I shouldn't be here on this stage. You know, Castro is my mother's name and was my grandmother's name before her.
I'd like to thank everyone for tuning into the debates. I'd like to thank Michael. I'd like to thank Bill. I'd like to thank Carlos. I'd like to say hello to all my viewers in America and Canada and Mexico. And I just really appreciate that that I get to talk to you here tonight. It's been a rough one, guys. I didn't think I was going to win, and I still don't. But if you go to, what's this guy's name? Castro? Castro.com. Go to Castro.com. We have shirts that say, vote for Cat. I don't got anything for this.
What's one me to vote against?
He's not, there's nothing uniquely bad about him. He's just kind of whatever.
You can't just go against the interests of a client. So I was stuck. On the one hand, I wanted to do the right thing. On the other hand, my livelihood, my student loans, my new house payment, my car payment depended on me shutting up, being conflicted out. So one day I walked into my law firm and I quit my job. And then I went and I voted against that land deal on the city council. And, you know, it was the first test that I had, and I think back to that because oftentimes we think of politics and you think of politics as dirty or corrupting. I wondered before I went in it whether it would change who I was. And I was proud that when that first test came, that I stood up for the people that I was there to represent and not for big special interests.
And that's what you'll get if you vote for me. I will stand up to the big interests. And I mean, there's no one else on this stage who can do that if you really think about it. WTF, they all went to law school. Newsflash, almost every politician, no, I'll just say all of them. Every politician is a lawyer.
Thank you very much. Castro, thank you to all of our candidates. It was a great debate. I think we learned a lot tonight. Thanks to you. Thanks to Texas Southern University for hosting us tonight. It was a great crowd as well tonight. Thanks to you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. You were really good during that Joe Biden bit.
Our coverage continues with Tom Yamas.
Gracias. And George, thank you. A great debate tonight with you and all of our terrific orators. The debate is over, as you said.
So that's the debate. It's very weird. Here's my predictions. I think that mainstream media and Twitter's going to say that Julian Castro was the winner, that he got big shots in there. I think that, unfortunately, I feel like Bernie Sanders was like, he did all right. He held his own, but didn't do anything noteworthy. I think he did good enough. Like, he didn't do a bad job, but it was like what you expected out of Bernie, and he handled Joe pretty well, but it was just kind of like a brushing interaction. Yang, I feel sort of the same way about as well. He seemed on point for a lot of his answers. Some of them he came off as nervous. And I don't know. I think that, you know, Beto is going to not move in the polls at all. He literally said nothing. I'm going to turn this shit down because I don't care what she has to say about this shit. Amy Klobuchar, I think she didn't do herself any favors, but she's in a predicament where no one cares no matter what. She literally has to come up there with like a bomb strapped to her chest and be like, I'm going to blow this fucking thing up if you don't vote for me. So she's, you know, there's nothing she can really do. She's diet Joe Biden, and people don't like Joe. So, whatever. I think that, you know, Joe took a lot of hard hits, and I think that, yeah, there we go. That's my boy. Yeah, kisses for all the viewers at home. But yeah, I think Joe definitely took a lot of jabs, but I think, at least in the media, they're going to portray it as he survived it. He got through. So, I don't know. I don't feel like anything, you know, absurdly destructive happened, except, like, you know, when the crowd started fucking yelling at him. That was so fucking good. Oh my god. Khonjin, will this stream be archived for however long Twitch does it themselves? Yeah, so... Yeah, people who are going to vote for Joe are going to vote for Joe no matter what. Yeah, a lot of people would just do it because of name recognition anyway. So, I wouldn't archive it in case of copyright strikes. I mean, I don't choose to archive. Like, what, should I delete it after it goes up? But, Khonjin, buying a Gilbert Gottfried cameo? I'm heavily considering it. I haven't used them at all yet, but when I found out, I knew I had to save them. I forgot you could see my bookmarks. But yeah, I guess I'm a little upset only because, I mean, Bernie and Yang did fine. I was hoping Yang would do a little more and that, you know, he'd have some form of a breakout, but he's just been maintaining what he's been doing for the last few debates, which is being unabrasive, not really attacking anyone. Bernie has done Bernie did fucking incredible last debate, so I was really happy about that. So Bernie's not in dire straits, but Yang has done well. He's done all right. But Yang's going to need something different, I think, going forward. I think he is going to have to get his hands dirty. I think he prides himself on the fact that, you know, he doesn't fight with the other candidates, but he needs something. Does anyone remember anything Kamala actually said about her policy? No, because it's fucking impossible. See, Yang was good, and I barely get politics. I mean, yeah, he's good, but he's my guy. Well, my second guy. Bernie's first. My mom seriously wants me to vote Republican. Well, make her Yang gang. Get her on the Yang gang, the Yang train. Get her to be a Bernie bro. Hook her up with that. All right. Let's see what these assholes think.
Reporter Rachel Scott, we're behind the scenes in the spin room here where the candidates are already beginning to arrive. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar is here. She will be with us here on ABC News Live shortly. The candidates are all expected here, but Rachel, a thought from you, because you've been out on the campaign trail. You talked to all the Democratic candidates last weekend in New Hampshire. What surprised you most tonight?
Well, I think there was just so much anticipation with Senator Warren and Biden being on the same stage. But what we saw from Senator Warren tonight was she stayed away from attacking the former vice president. The attacks came from Castro, the harshest attacks tonight. Now, when I interviewed the senator just this past weekend, she told me that her plan was to just describe her vision to the country, and tonight she stuck to that, even when Biden invoked her name.
Yeah, she sure did. A big fight over health care that led off the night. The three frontrunners in this race, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, sparring over that. We know the president was expected to be watching tonight. So far, Rachel, you also covered the Trump campaign. Pretty quiet on the presidential front here.
Pretty quiet from the president himself. Obviously, the Trump campaign has ramped up their attacks. They've been watching this very closely. They say they've heard nothing new tonight. They were flying a banner overhead earlier today.
Did you see Rex Orange County put out a new song? No. I don't even know what that is.
Stay with us here on ABC News Live. Continuing coverage ahead. We'll be back with Tom Yamas and the panel in just a second, and the candidates as well, stopping by here in our position in the very.
I really want to see if these fuckers put a positive spin on Joe Biden's performance. because it's pretty dire at this
Back
point.
live from Houston at the ABC News Democratic debate. I want to get right to our chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl. An exciting night for politics.
Jonathan
and so many
Karl,
moments,
I love
John.
that name.
Tom, and I want to look at that moment, that incredible moment where Julian Castro seemed to be playing the age card on Joe Biden, saying that he had forgotten what he had just said 2 minutes earlier on the
Yeah, they're
Medicare
gonna say it's
for
Castro.
All issue. I looked back at the transcript here, and it looks to me like Julian Castro was just flatly wrong. The question was whether or not somebody would have to buy into Medicare under his plan if they couldn't afford it, or whether or not they would automatically be enrolled. And here's what Biden said less than 2 minutes earlier. You'll be able to buy in. Anyone who can't afford gets automatically enrolled in the Medicare-typed option. Anyone who can't afford it gets automatically enrolled. It seemed to me that Biden was right and that Julian Castro mischaracterized what he had said.
Jonathan Karl with that transcript. And we'll be right
So
back
they are
with
going to
more from the
go
debate.
with it. They are going to.
10 candidates, one critical night. And now, right after the debate.
So I guess I was wrong. They're not going to play it up as like the big own. They're going to, as the children might say, stan Joe Biden. The most innovative daily news podcast. It's this one. What your list? Me. I got it. It's the most innovative one because you've never seen shit like this before. You ever seen that? You ever see someone move a mouse like that and also be able to talk about politics? The awful green screen. That it's innovative. It's ironic. Imagine starting your day off with the most innovative friends ever, and this fucking idiot, and this fucking idiot. Imagine hearing from people. Dude, imagine. Wish I had friends. Yeah, I feel that. So, what do you, the fucking dumbass viewers think? Who do you think won? Who should fight next? They should watch the best sitcom of all time instead, Khonjin House, where they can wake up every morning with their best friend, Case Bagger. Yeah, imagine waking up every day. Imagine waking up. Imagine your friends. Imagine some delicious pizza. So, I'm vaguely interested to see what these reporters have to say because I want to know what the mainstream narrative is going to be. So let's find out.
ABC News debate just concluded. I'm here with the
And then I'm going to shut this shit down.
correspondent Terry Moran, who's in town today. Terry, I want to get your hot take.
Oh my God.
A winner?
Jeffrey Jefferson
First, shout out
just
to the
subbed for
moderators. They're our
16
colleagues,
months.
But this was a
Hell
substantive
yeah.
debate. They did really well. They let them go at it and yet focused it.
Well, I got to get going. Thanks for the stream, Khonjin. I'm going to have some Hot Pockets or pizza for you tomorrow. Hell yeah.
In this campaign, which is on the Democratic side been dominated by bold progressive voices, the center struck back tonight, right? Biden had a
Oh
pretty good
my
night.
God,
Klobuchar
really?
got some good moments, and as did Beto O'Rourke, and the debate shifted a little bit. Now,
The
how
center
far left
strikes
do you go?
back?
I
That's
think
the
that voice
narrative?
that plays better.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Inside these halls. What about the center? What is really possible?
But what about the center?
Pivot to the middle by some of those outside candidates looking to be a Biden alternative. Pete Buttigieg going in hard on healthcare, saying, I think Americans should have the ability to make a choice.
Listen, they didn't get, like, the progressives didn't demolish the fucking... But is that what you took away from this? That the centrists won?
And he's a very talented politician, but he took a shot at Biden going there on his age, and he was wrong. It was he who forgot, not Biden.
And much more from Terry coming up. Thanks for sticking with us. Much
See,
more
he was the
coverage ahead. Welcome to
asshole,
Spin
not
Room
Biden,
on
who
ABC
is
News.
my friend. Imagine having a friend like Joe Biden. Khonjin, it's getting late. Thanks for being the only outlet that I could bear watching the debates through. commentary is golden. It's much appreciated. Yeah, it's nearly 11, so I'm gonna shut it down in a few minutes, but I'm just... Really? Tonight was a victory for the centrists. I don't know. I just don't get that. I don't get how that's, like, fucking possible. Is Yang a centrist? Hell no. Yang is not a centrist. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean he's a full-blown progressive. There are reasons to be weary of Yang. I do like him. I do think he's definitely one of the good ones. But, you know, he's a Silicon Valley guy. And I believe, I would just be careful of his proposals that lean more libertarian, I guess dangerously libertarian, because the freedom dividend, it's like great. I'd like it to go in, but it also creates the strong possibility of a permanent underclass. And for someone who seems keen on deregulation and shit, it's a legitimate concern. But that being said, all of that said, he's still leagues above the assholes you just saw who literally say nothing and are just about defending the status quo. So on principle, you know, he's just far and away, you know, better than the rest. But at arm's length, I am Yang Gang.
But first, I have a few words for Donald Trump.
Oh
who
boy.
We all know is watching.
Yeah, they saved this own.
American people are so much better than.
You are a gay noob.
Hope now and do something now.
We know Donald Trump's a racist, but there is no red badge of courage for calling him that.
And now, President Trump, you can go back to watching Fox News.
I, who wrote the damn bill, if I may say so, intend to eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses.
While Bernie wrote the bill, I read the bill. It says that we will no
I
longer
fucking
have
forgot about
private
that.
insurance as we know it.
I've actually never met anybody who likes their health insurance.
The senator on my left has not indicated how she pays.
So yeah, these are just stupid recap quotes. But and anyways, Bernie gets 2 clips, and that's the best Amy had. I ate the goddamn bill. That's pretty good. I wish Yang leaned more into anti-capitalism, but to be honest, I know his policies well enough to say that he isn't. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a deal breaker for me. I just, you know, there's just a lot of pitfalls you got to be careful of. Thanks, ABC. Oh, here they come, the experts. Is that Bernie?
Houston, we are
They
inside
have
the
Bernie
spin
there?
room right now with our
All right.
powerhouse panel and one special guest.
Let's
who
see
just
what
got to the
dumbass
debate
questions
stage,
they
but
ask
still
him.
Going strong right now, Senator Bernie Sanders from.
Take a shot every time they ask a question that's framed from a Republican talking point.
You and Vice President Biden, do you think you're able to do that?
Well, I hope so. You know, Joe is a good friend of mine. I like him very much. He's a very decent human being. But Joe and I have a very different voting record and a very different vision for this country. You know, Joe voted for the war in Iraq. I vigorously opposed it. He voted for disastrous trade agreements.
Joe is a good friend of mine. That's kind of become a joke, I think, when talking about. He's sort of, Bernie always does this like, you know, I like Joe Biden. He's a good friend of mine. But I would skin him alive if given the opportunity, and if it was legal, I would throw him into a trash can and light it on fire and throw it into a ravine. And you can quote me on that.
Underinsured.
Well, but Bernie, isn't that violence? Aren't you proposing violence against Joe Biden? Well, I like Joe, and he's a good friend of mine. I'm just saying that if I was given the opportunity to skin him like a cat, I would. I would absolutely peel him like a potato and throw him off of a 3-story building. That is just my policy that I would propose for killing Joe Biden. So You can expect to hear that a
answer
lot.
is that the average American will be paying substantially less for health care than he or she is. See, that's like a Republican.
Oh, take a shot.
Going to raise taxes.
It's
But
not
the
a
way-
Republican high, it's
No,
a
let me
fair
just say-
question because the
Yeah,
middle
it's a
class
fair
would like to
question.
know.
But here's the other point. We're going to do away with all premiums. If you pay $1,000 a month, what do you call that? Is that a tax for the insurance companies? What would you call it? All right, I would call it a tax. That's gone. How much you paying out of pocket? That's gone. How much you paying for co-payments? Gone. How much you paying for prescription drugs? Under Medicare for All,
There we
you
go.
won't pay more than $200 a year for all the prescription drugs you need. At the end of the day, of course, we're going to pay for it like every other major country out of the general tax base. Of course we will. Like we pay for military spending. It will be funded progressively.
I actually
Like
did know he
people
was
will pay
related
the
to
most.
Larry
I'm not going
David.
to tell you that average people will not pay more, but they will not be paying premiums, co-payments, out-of-pocket expenses. They will be spending less on health care than they currently do. So I get a little bit upset. You know, this is Trumpism. You know, oh my God, somebody's going to be paying more in taxes. Yeah, no more premiums, no more co-payments, no more deductibles, spending less on health care than you currently do. Let's face up to that reality.
I spoke with the healthcare CEO last night because I know we were going to talk about this. He is responsible for a chain of hospitals across the United States, and he told me,
Yep,
Medicare
take
right
another
now has a
shot.
problem going into 2026. How are we going to pay for all this? How are we going to pay the physicians? How are we going to pay the hospitals? Where does it go from here?
Let me repeat it again, okay? We are spending twice as much per person on health care as any other country on earth. Canada manages to cover all of their people. If you have a heart transplant in Canada, you're in the hospital for a month. Do you know how much you pay when you leave that hospital? Do you know?
Tell me.
Nothing, not a zero. They're spending half as much per person, and they manage to cover all of their people. That makes a little bit sense to me. And by the way, under my bill, we're going to cover home health care as well.
No, further.
And we're going to phase it in over a 4-year period.
Do you think right now this is a battle for the soul
No.
of the Democratic
No, I don't
Party?
think.
It seems to be a matchup with you and Senator Warren and Joe Biden right now in this three-way race. Is it a battle for the soul of the party?
Well, it is a battle as to who is prepared to take on Wall Street, who is prepared to take on the healthcare industry. Let's be clear. Healthcare industry made $100 billion in profit.
All right, here's my deal. I'm going to stick around for Bernie, and then when he's done, unless it's Yang, who literally comes right after, I don't give a shit. I don't want to hear Joe Biden's interpretation of this bullshit.
And that is to guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child as a right and save the average person significant sums of money on health care.
Your supporters are loyal. They've stood by you. Why should people supporting Senator Warren go over to your side?
Well, you could ask Senator Warren that. I'm sure she has a good answer. All I can focus on is my campaign. I have been there. 4 years ago, I made a decision that I didn't
New prediction. They're going to push Bernie to say something mean about Warren.
be a primary in which the needs of working people were not represented. And I got into that primary. I took on the whole bloody establishment. And at the end of the day, not only did I win 22 states and 13 million votes, we changed the political conversation in America so that now people are talking and passing $15 an hour minimum wage. We're making public colleges and universities tuition free all over this country. Medicare for all in poll after poll is now popular. Climate change. 4 years ago, I said climate change was a national security issue. People laughed at me. Ain't laughing at me right now. So I think we have laid the template out there to say that we need to take on the very powerful corporate elite, which is not only greedy, they are actually corrupt. I mean,
They were yelling, "Let Yang speak." Hell yeah. That is, okay, that's the best own ever.
You've been down this dance before. Do you see a scenario if it remains a three-way race where you and Senator Warren come to some type of pact and say it's either me or you to take on Joe Biden if it comes down to that?
Okay.
I think we are in this race to win. Senator Warren will speak for herself. We're feeling really good about
I count
Iowa
that.
and
Take a shot.
South Carolina, California, and Nevada. We're feeling really good. We think we're going to win this thing.
Okay, Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, Senator Cory Booker is going to join us now just off the debate stage as
Oh,
well.
wonderful.
He's gonna make his
I don't
way
care.
over here. Senator Sanders, thank you. We'll have a cordial handover of the microphone here, not a handover of power.
Excuse me, I have to hug.
All right, no, yeah, colleagues here. Senator.
Oh, Senator, Corey, thank God you showed up. Fucking Bernie's such a bore, right? Anyways, tell us more about some random fuckers in New Jersey. All right, so thanks for joining me for watching the Democrat debates. If you guys like this, I'll probably do it for the next debate if I don't feel like watching it by myself. I enjoyed it. I thought it went well. Yeah, maybe it will make the political process maybe 1% more bearable. It could be nice. Be nice to get involved. So, yeah, I'll consider it. But anyways, I'm out of here. I'm gonna take a wicked piss. Yeah, enjoy your night. You know, y'all know what it is. Fuck out of here. Take one last look into the void, and now you die.